everybody. It's 5 o'clock and we will commence our meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much. I want to welcome those who are watching this to this particular meeting, the city planning meeting, the first one for 2024, and all those present here in the gallery. I want to begin by the acknowledgements. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the city of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture, and rights. I recognize the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We are present in attendance the following elected members: Alderman Mari Zuko, Alderman John Kelly, Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds, Alderman Louise Bloomfield, Councillor Lord Berger, Councillor Ryan Passalts, Dr. Councillor Zelinda Sherlock, Councillor Bill Harvey, and Deputy Lord Mayor Helen Burnett. Thank you, everybody. Apologies and leave of absence. We have Councillor Coates, who has sent his apologies. Is there any other apologies? Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. Would someone move the minutes of the 20th of December? Thank you very much, Deputy. Moved. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Confirmation of consideration of supplementary items. Any? No. Indication of pecuniary and conflict of interests. Anyone wants to declare conflict? No. Thank you. Transfer of agenda item. No. Number 5, Planning Authority items, consideration of items with deputation. We have 2, 6.11 and item 6.21. Thank you, Deputy. Moved. All in favour? Thank you. Point number 6, the committee is now acting as planning authority, and I just want to note that and remind each one of us elected members. 6.1, applications under the Sullivan Cove Planning Scheme. 6.11, 53 to 61 Salamanca Place. And we have a deputation for this, Blair Brownless, the applicant. Would you come up the front, please, and use that mic? Please, yes, yeah. Now, you have 5 minutes. Either you share it among yourselves, or one of you will speak and take the 5 minutes, and then afterwards there'll be questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, and when you have 30 seconds left, I'll give you a warning. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to address you all. So ours is concerning the Pavilion Sports Bar, and we've opened in 6 months, and so we opened up the sports bar as a point of difference there. As you know, there's a lot of restaurants and bars on the strip, and we wanted to have a business which was separate and unique from some of the other bars and restaurants that are along there. So we have, obviously, with showing live sport is our main opportunity to get customers in, and so we have about 10 TVs inside. We have the 2 outside, clearly inside our outdoor dining area. So we originally hired a company to put those TVs in professionally at high costs, actually, for that. So make sure there's no visible cords or anything like that. It's all integrated into the ceiling, and there's absolutely no safety issues with it, and that's been recognised by your report as well. So, and it's clearly not on any feature of our building. We've got a beautiful sandstone building. We haven't touched that. the actual two TVs are mounted in the outdoor dining area, just on poles there and underneath the umbrella. So we want to recognise Salamanca, the whole strip, as an entertainment precinct. We know that that's where people gather to to watch sport. There's lots of TVs and in other buildings there as well, but to gather, to have meals and to enjoy each other's company. So we deliberately put the two TVs, they're very discreet. You cannot actually see them from the street. If you park in front of our business, you cannot even actually tell the TVs are there. And even in your own report, you acknowledge that you can only really see the TVs once you're inside our area as you're walking through there. So it's not designed, the TVs are not outwardly facing, designed to attract people in there. It's another value add that we do for our customers, especially on busy nights. The other point about us is we're a very small venue compared to some other ones. So we would like to get as many customers in there and each vantage point as we can. So so we just want to emphasise again, we think that the whole streetscape is set up as an entertainment precinct. Even in the Sullivan's Cove strategic framework, it's acknowledged the whole strip is the heart of Hobart's artistic, recreational and intellectual community, and it's dynamic and it's evolving, and it involves recreation and entertainment. It's a whole entertainment district. Now we acknowledge the heritage value of the area. There's clearly heritage significance, and we deliberately tried to make the TVs as discreet as possible. Like I said, you would not even know they're there unless you were actually inside our own building. So that's what we've done. We've constructed them at considerable expense. They're very sturdy, robust, and we are more than happy to have them on at certain hours of the day as well. We don't always go late at night there, but you know, as soon as the AFL is finished and things like that, the TVs go off and we're finished there. So that's some of our main points there that I'd like to emphasise. The other point is that we would like to, we've got many highlighted examples of other businesses on the strips. There's another business just about 4 or 5 stores up from us. It's got a TV, outwardly facing TV. It's actually got a speaker on top of it as well. Ours is much more discreet than that one. There's a whole range of signage and commercial signage on businesses there, all along the strip. You know, it's clearly obvious. These are outwardly facing to the general public that you can see from the street, you can see from across the road, you can see from everywhere. Ours, you certainly can't. So there's a whole lot of examples there along the whole Salamanca strip that they're all, lots of signage, which ours is classified as a signage that is highly visible to everyone that comes down to Salamanca.
Thank you. You have 30 minutes, 30 seconds left.
30 seconds?
30 seconds.
And just the final point, even your own Tas Visitor Centre, you've got TV displays out there. You've got, it's also a digital notice board type setup there as well. So thank you for hearing us out, and we're very hopeful of a positive outcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bond. Questions? Thank you, Councillor Lubberger.
Thanks for coming in, Mr. Brownless. I've just got a couple of questions. What sort of volume have you got on the TVs out there?
Yeah, so the volumes are actually controlled from inside, so it's not loud at all. We can actually, the actual TVs, we don't use the actual individual unit, and we can beam it, we can control it from inside. So, you know, when the football game's on, you know, a big game, the volume's up a little bit, and then, but in between, most of the time, if you went down there's no volume at all. If there's no live sport, big event, there's no volume at all.
Thank you. And just one more question through you, Chair. You mentioned the cost. Are you able to share that with us?
Yeah, how much did that cost to?
$3,000 a unit.
3,000 per unit. So they're obviously industrial strength, and because we honestly know that overnight they're outside, security and safety for everyone. So they're very robust, and you can see in the pictures that
Electronics.
I've been seen. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for your answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, yes, $3,000 a unit, it's not cheap. But I just want to ask a question in regards to the report and the heritage officer making a number of different statements which are sort of all over the place. Would you give consideration to potentially either screening around the black area of the TV so it doesn't actually look like a TV in some painting form or something like that, or in a box, or so it blends in with the environment of Salamanca? Would that be something you'd consider at all?
Yeah, you're talking about the back and sides and things, Yeah, anything, and you know, we would be keen to get the TVs installed, obviously, so any suggestions you had moving forward, we would. We're actually not keen on any advertising material on the back or anything like that. We just,
No, I wasn't,
to make it more...
I wasn't considering advertising, I was just considering the aesthetics. They're black with, you've got a white framing there. It could be something that sort of blends in with the building, the structure you got outside and the front of the building as well. So it could be a colour thing, or it could be a box thing, or something like that. As a thought, it could be to the satisfaction of the director if by chance it can get through. So you're interested, that's fine. Thank you very much for that.
Any other questions? Alderman Bloomfield.
I have two questions. I notice this is a retrospective application. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a fair question, because when we installed the TV units, we actually thought they were well within our existing dining room, which happens to be outdoors. So we thought that because they weren't outwardly facing, we didn't need a permit, and we acknowledged that wasn't correct, and you guys made contact with us, and we retrospectively have put in the planning permit. I will add that there was no objections received from any other parties during the period, but yeah, we would acknowledge that we went about it the wrong way there, and but the intent was, it was just inside our regular dining area, which happens to be outside. We've got inside dining area with TVs. We just naturally thought we could do the same thing on the outside, which is not correct.
At first, we probably weren't actually sure whether they would be sort of semi-permanent or removable, but for safety and cords and things, it's actually resolved.
The second question is, you've obviously done a little bit of investigation around the area. You've identified that there are a number of businesses that already have TV screens. Of those, very many or any of them, do they do sport as well? Is it just you?
On the strip where we are, they not on the outside. There's other businesses that show sport on inside as well.
The outside ones I'm talking about.
Definitely.
Yeah. There is in Salamanca Square. Yeah.
But you're not on the square. You're on the.
Yeah, we're on the outside.
But it's still outside dining licence. So.
Yeah, but we deliberately did that for a point of difference from all the other restaurants and bars, like I was saying before. Yeah.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks for your deputation. And I had a similar question as to you know, this is an occupation licence, and just wondering about the application and why it's retrospective. So what are you actually displaying? Is it commercial TV? Is it sports?
Yeah. It's live sporting.
AB, horse racing?
Yeah. It's predominantly AFL cricket. There was some horse racing, but that's more inside, actually. And jack jumpers, basketball, Hobart Hurricanes. So there's a focus on Tasmanian teams, but obviously the big ones are AFL and cricket and basketball. And soccer, the Matildas, that was huge, yes.
And so is that not a commercial TV station, or is it just a TV?
Yeah, that's via Fox Sport, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Some of the football is on free to air.
Free to air as well.
It's whatever channel it's
Basically, no commercial TV. it's not operating as a commercial TV.
Yeah.
But on free to air, it's not, no commercials on
So
free to air.
no sport at the moment, no TV.
Yep, but during, yeah, okay, no, I think I think you've answered it, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Schiller.
So just to clarify that final comment, so what did you mean by that? No
So
sport, no...
the TV operates to show sport, and for instance, we would show the AFL match. Let's say it's Saturday afternoon, and then that goes into Tas Vacations or whatever. Then it's off.
I mean,
It
a
means we're
commercial?
not showing business, we're showing sport.
Yeah.
We're not,
Like the
the
use,
TV's not going 24/7.
No advertising
It's
on it.
like-
Yeah.
it's we're not selling anything.
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Sorry, just just further to those questions. So, the channel you're showing though, does it have advertisements in between,
It'll
like
be
at breaks and stuff?
So we don't. It's Fox TV basically. So it's yeah.
So when they have
showing
breaks.
AFL
Yeah.
and and I guess whatever advertisements are in a Fox.
They do have some content of that.
Yeah.
It's predominantly light sport.
So probably a fair bit of sports betting stuff and all that sort of stuff. Is there any gaming licence issues or?
No, not unless Fox Sport have their own partnership.
Yeah, but you're not. You wouldn't be
Outside
seen as a gaming venue because you've got sports bet ads and all that sort of stuff. And I guess one of the challenges for us is that, you know, there's a little bit of what's good for you potentially is good for everyone in the strip. How would you feel if sort of everyone started adding their own TVs and, you know, not to do sport, but they might do music or they might do heritage films or whatever. You know, every single venue had a couple of TVs going. What sort of situation do you think that puts us in as
I think
regulators?
the thing is that they've already, or the Heritage Office has nominated its signage, and signage is so different in Salamanca. I mean, we can pass around these photos of signage showing what different. I mean, we don't want to individualise each business, but
We do sometimes we use it on Monday nights for quizzes actually,
Yeah.
but I do know what you mean. And interstate, you'll see interstate in Europe, anywhere you'll see plenty of venues with TVs. Some of those locations have more. They're older than us, I guess, and they've still. Yeah, they have them, and if multiples have them, maybe there's a new rules that are set in the future where the TVs are reduced or something specific.
So you're saying that if every venue, you know, added a couple of TVs to their dining areas, you'd see that as fine.
Yeah, that's their right, and that's up to you guys.
Well, I guess that's the question at the moment. It's probably not their right under the planning scheme, but I guess if we approve this, then it might become an as-of right thing for other venues, and then they all add TVs and...
Possibly more
But
guidelines on what it is.
They're not intrusive if you see the photos.
But wouldn't that take away your commercial advantage if everybody...
It's not a commercial, it's not for commercial advantage, it's complementary.
Can we just keep it to the questions, please, and answer the question, if you don't mind? Any other question?
It's not for commercial, I mean, it's just complementary to our use. Not everyone is a sports bar, maybe you can distinguish it by that. If someone's at some other bar, jazz bar, and they put a TV for sports out the front,
for
they
jazz.
can put jazz. I guess that's, for you guys to discuss.
Yep, okay.
Councillor Harvey?
So you say you've got 10 TVs inside. I think the report said 9, so you've got an extra one. Why do you need them outside as well? Like if people are going to watch sport, you know, what's your preference, inside or outside? And if you're sitting outside, I'm more inclined to look at the people go past than watch sport. That'd be the last place I'd go, to be honest, if there were TVs there.
Well, we're a small venue, actually. We're a very small venue, so it's about capacity and drawing more customers to the venue, actually, yeah. So, and we can fill up very easy. We can fill up with 23, 30 people, and we can feel full in our venue. So it's about increasing capacity and opportunity for everyone to see big live sport games.
And they're all there to watch sport, are they? They're not there to eat and drink. It's sport is the big drive.
To live sport, it's a massive driver. We're busy doing the AFL season and big cricket games, big basketball games. You know, Monday to Thursday, besides trivia night, we're very quiet. We're very quiet unless there's some big sporting event on.
It's also about freedom of choice to watch it inside or outside. I sometimes like watching sport outside, sometimes I watch it inside.
I think if you work inside all week, you don't mind being outside.
Yeah, no, you've answered the question. And you didn't get any advice before you installed them. For what reason? Was it because you reckon you could get it across the line retrospectively, or you just didn't know what you were doing?
Well, no, there's venues already with TVs in Salamanca, and I know that for a fact, so...
they've all gone through a process and they've all been approved.
Oh, maybe they have, maybe they haven't.
Yeah. And just with regard to advertising, what's the situation with advertising gambling out in a public environment, outdoors? Is that going to be an issue as well? Because I don't think we have public advertising for gambling. It's got to be.
I don't know the last
one for the director. But could you also switch the screen over to become a advertising screen if you wanted to?
Oh, we could, but there's no point.
No, it's not set up. It's not set up.
We can hand on heart, so we're not keen on advertising outside. Not at all.
Excuse me, could you have one person speaking? Otherwise, it makes it difficult. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. No, we're not keen on advertising at all in the outdoor space.
Just purely sport.
Purely
and the ads during the breaks.
Yeah, that's part of the package. Yeah, that we have to put up with.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. You may take your seats.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
We have the Heritage Officer here with us, the Council Heritage Officer, Nick Booth. Please, Nick. If there is any questions that the member wants to ask, any question, Councillor Passault.
Thank you. I assume this is also an opportunity to ask to the Director as well. Do all of the screens that are outward facing have planning permission, and are screens that are inside but outward facing through windows treated differently?
In terms of other screens, sorry, through you, Chair, we are not aware of other businesses who have TV screens along Salamanca. If they are doing so, it's without the knowledge of I checked with the Manager of Compliance today and she was not aware of any, and it would be in breach of our occupational licence terms. Sorry, can you please remind me the second part of your question?
TVs that are outward facing through windows but technically internal are treated differently.
Yes, they are. If they're set back from the window but they're still facing out, then they are exempt. I think that you'd put
How would you
one of the quirks.
How would you define setback? Is it
back by 15 centimetres?
Right. And a follow-up question on that, is the Sky News constant TV that's like 3 metres across, does that have approval?
Through your Chair, you're talking about the one inside Salamanca?
The Mercury building.
Through your Chair, that is exempt, that sign.
I have a supplementary on that there.
Councillor Zook.
So if someone, the question, if someone has a TV inside and it's set back 15 centimetres and it's switched on loud, window open, it's legal.
Through your Chair, apparently.
Okay.
Follow-up question. This has been determined that it needs to be assessed under signage. I've had multiple people point out to me that it's not a sign, it's inward facing, not outward facing, which a sign would always be outward facing for the purpose of education of the public, of what's in the venue, for advertising purposes. These are doing none of those things. Is it possible that these actually don't fit in the planning scheme at all? They're in a zone that's not defined. And is it possible that assessing it using signage is a misguided approach?
Through you, Chair, I accept that the planning scheme doesn't neatly deal with this scenario, but the job of the expert planners is to do their best to sort of make, square pegs fit into round holes sometimes, and this is their professional view on what is an appropriate interpretation of what's proposed.
Alderman Zuko.
Look, I don't have any questions, but I'd just like to pre-advise that I'd like to move a motion for approval as soon as, I just said, not now, as soon as appropriate.
Lord Mayor.
Can I ask the Heritage Officer just to give us a rundown of the reasons for his a refusal, and also whether it's slightly in contradiction with the planner's advice? Whether you can comment on that or maybe the Director would, but I guess, if you could just give us an overview of your assessment of the situation.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, can you hear me okay? Yep. Through you, Chair. Look, the heritage approach has faced the same sort of knotty issues. Is it signage? We've obviously advised that yes, it is signage. And then the other issue is it a commercial signage or is it interpretive signage? Commercial signage, I've been advised, means that it's a specific signage that is advertising the building or the use that's occurring within the building, whilst an interpretive sign is something entirely different. Interpretive signage is perhaps something that you would consider to be something that is providing a service to the general public, such as heritage information or interpretation of what this area used to be like. That isn't necessarily a description that I would say fits comfortably with what's occurring in our businesses. That is the way that we should. I started my approach in terms of seeing what is actually prohibited, and the scheme says that any sign that's displaying or containing electronic or video graphics or mechanically moving figures or graphics that's primarily for commercial purposes should be considered as prohibited. I think that description fits what we're looking at the moment more than an interpretive sign. However, the requirement under the planning scheme, under the planning officers, is that it is an interpretive sign, and so therefore I looked at it from the point of view of, well, what does an interpretive sign supposed to do? And 25.4, in terms of requirements of signs, says that table 25.1, acceptable solutions, it pretty much says that interpretive signs must be capable of forming an integral part of the streetscape without appearing dominant. Now, integral, and also the second part, it must not detract from the cultural or architectural significance or amenity of the place or building. I think it's worth remembering that the scheme does not require or does not relate solely to things that are placed on buildings. It also relates and applies the same requirements for things that are adjacent to culturally heritage listed. So the scheme goes on to say, as I said, it must be capable of forming an integral part of the streetscape. And of course, I went back to what Macquarie Concise Dictionary defines as integral, and it says necessary to the completeness of a whole. So the test is almost, do these TVs complete the streetscape as a heritage series of places? The scheme always takes the view that that the streetscape is formed by the built form and not the activities that are happening within that built form. So even if there is an argument to say, well, this is part of the milieu of a commercial or entertainment sort of area, that's not really what we should be judging it on. It's whether those signage is appropriate for the buildings and for the heritage aspects of and so my approach is that they are visible despite what the applicant is suggesting. As you walk along, and I don't know if you visited the site, but as you walk along, they are visible. They are, although they're inwardly facing, they are visible as you're walking through as a pedestrian, and they are on land that's owned by the council. You know, this is not private space. This is land that is leased, and that therefore, you know, it should form part of the public realm. So my approach was: is it integral? Does it really fall into the aspects of it being an informative piece of signage? My view was that it didn't really meet those sort of requirements.
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Can I just seek clarification? Earlier you said that if we'd assessed this as an electronic sign for commercial purposes, it was very clear that under the scheme it's prohibited. So why didn't we assess it as a electronic sign for commercial purposes?
Because the advice from the manager of planning was that we should be assessing this as
and why was that?
Through Chair, perhaps I can assist Lord Mayor. So the interpretation of an electronic sign is something that's sort of like an LED sign, bananas $1, you know, ham $5, those sorts of LED type signs in particular, as an example, which are advertising specific products or a specific business, which this isn't. It's obviously part of their commercial operation overall, but it's not a specific sign that's advertising as its main role, I guess, and that's why we've made that distinction.
Yeah,
Elected members may disagree.
Right, okay. So I guess the members of the public might say, is a large TV that's electronic, that's used for commercial purposes, you know, does it fit within that, or is it an interpretive sign, which is, I think the general public would potentially see as much more of a sort of heritage information sign, but the planners felt that it was the latter, that it was an interpretive sign rather than a commercial sign.
Through you, Chair, correct. The heading, I guess, of the sign, interpretive sign, does suggest one thing, but when you look at the body of the definition, it's much broader, whereas the electronic sign definition is much more focused on the specifics of being for a commercial purpose, which these, in our view, aren't.
And can I just ask, is this normal that because wouldn't you just ask your heritage advisors to make the assessment based on their heritage assessment, or is there normally this kind of...
There are times, even within our own planning team, there'll be disagreements about which box they fall into. I guess in this case, I take the advice of Ben, who's the acting manager of the development appraisal team, and Mr. Booth doesn't necessarily agree with that. And elected members may disagree as well. You may feel that it's better classified as, along with Mr. Booth's interpretation, and that it should be prohibited and refused on that basis.
Any other question?
Just what's the position in Salamanca on neon signage?
For commercial purposes.
Through your chair, sorry, I don't have the planning scheme in front of me, but I would imagine that neon signage is generally considered not appropriate when adjacent to a heritage listed place.
Well, maybe we should start looking down there, mightn't we? The other point, you made the point that this is council-owned land. Is this precinct, Salamanca, an entertainment precinct?
Through you, Chair, it is identified as an area where entertainment can take place, but I don't think it is solely recognised as an entertainment
So all the outdoor dining along the strip, which probably takes over 3/4 of it, you wouldn't consider that part of the entertainment strip? Yeah, you would or you wouldn't?
Point of order, can I just, I think these questions are more appropriate for the general planning rather than the heritage issue.
Well, if the general planning can answer it, general planning can answer it. I'm just asking the question. It's a question. Okay. Did I interrupt you when you had a question? No, I didn't.
No,
Thank you.
Point of order in the
It's not a point of order.
Well, it was.
Okay, I allow you the question.
Okay.
Ask the question, the edge was answered. Any other question?
No, the question on the entertainment precinct in regards to the outdoor dining hasn't been answered. So can someone answer that?
Perhaps I can answer
Thank
that
you.
through you, Chair. It's clearly accepted that this particular strip has an entertainment function. We issue what we call outdoor dining licences. I guess that doesn't necessarily give anything a specific boost in the scheme, and the scheme provisions do still need to be complied with for any specific infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do have a few more questions, and this is probably for planning rather than Mr. Booth, but just in terms of the precedent question, so if this is approved, could we then expect that we would need to approve multiple interpretive signs in all the outdoor occupation licences, TVs and that sort of thing? Would that be so?
Well, tonight we're talking about a planning permit, and there is another step for there would need to be a new occupational licence which allowed the TVs to take place. As we say consistently, there is no such thing as a precedent in planning, and each application must be considered on its own merits. I guess a natural flow from if the council tonight as planning authority decides that this sort of infrastructure is appropriate, then there might be further applications to follow, but I'm not sure whether that will be the case.
And there was the issue raised by Councillor Posselt around, is this actually a sign if it's facing inwards into an occupation licence?
Through you, Chair, yes. The definition of sign is extremely broad, means any graphic, pictorial or written display, including any structural material when viewed or formed from a public road or public space.
Because this is a public space.
Space is still a public space.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. On when we get to the occupation licence issue, I guess, when do we have any oversight of that? Or is that operational? Is there an issue around the gambling, promotion of gambling, websites potentially in a public space? And would there be an extra cost for more significant infrastructure like TVs in an occupation licence, or would it be the same as just tables and chairs?
Through you, Chair, I have spoken to the Manager of Compliance today, and this would be a new step for us to approve an occupational licence with TVs. It wouldn't come with a great deal of enthusiasm from officers, but I accept that if the elected members decide tonight that it is appropriate, then we would need to carefully consider the terms of those licences. It is a delegated function, so it wouldn't normally come to elected members.
And what would be their concerns about an occupation licence with TVs?
Through you, Chair, I guess all the concerns particularly highlighted by Mr Booth in terms of if we do it for one, then we have to, usually we try and approach those situations in a consistent basis, so we could end up with a strip of enclosed TVs along that strip potentially.
And the gambling issue, is that something that's an issue or not really? Or does it need a separate licence for?
I'm really not able to assist the committee with that. Planning certainly doesn't control the substance of signs. In terms of the context of the occupational licence, we need to consider that further.
We'd be able to get advice on whether the council needs to seek advice from the state government's gambling agency around that, or licensee.
Through you, Chair, I can certainly take that on notice.
Any other questions? Just a reminder to elected members, if we could just ask questions with regards to heritage while Councillor Booth is there, I'll appreciate it. And then we can have the opportunity to ask many questions. Otherwise, I think there is a bit of a confusion. So any questions pertaining to heritage that we want to ask Nick Booth? Councillor Harvey.
No, I haven't
No?
got a question. I was
all right.
going to make my comment.
Okay, Alderman Bloomfield.
Yes.
Sorry, my apologies. I think Councillor Kelly was before that.
Mine's to the planning.
Okay, planning. So we'll wait for that. Yeah, thank you.
Looking at what we're talking about, it'd be really easy to talk about the commercial, and we know that that's not going to work. But the interpretive I thought was really interesting, because you're talking about the integral and how it has to be a part of the whole area. And this is not a sporting precinct, and I think the issue predominantly, I think, is coming from the fact that sport is being shown, and that is probably what's causing a bit of the issue with this heritage area, isn't it? It's the fact that it's sport being shown, and that isn't conducive to the area. It's not known as a sporting area. So would that be along the lines where we should be looking?
Through you, Chair, in my consideration of the application, the fact that it is showing sport was not a consideration. These are TVs in my mind, or they are displaying activities. If it was sport, if it was soap operas, it wouldn't make any difference. So that will be up to the elected officials to decide as to.
So the interpretive element, the part where it's got to be integral to this area, is predominantly the fact that we're now placing signage additional to everything else, and that is starting to kind of create an environment that's unique and different to what we initially started with. That's
Yes, I mean, certainly the more signage, the more different types of signage, the complexity that occurs. And as I said, interpretive signage, I think, is more generally associated with things that visitors to the site would read, understand, direct them to sort of places, make them more aware of where it is and what is occurring in that area, as opposed to what is happening at any particular site.
Deputy.
Chair. Mr. Booth, obviously these are large screens that are sometimes in use, sometimes not, but fairly permanent fixtures. Is there anything, should this be approved tonight, is there anything to mitigate some of the starkness or ugliness of these screens when they're not in use, in your opinion?
For you, Chair, so just so I clarify, so whilst they're not in use, things that we can mitigate there?
Yeah.
For you, Chair, no, I think the applicant has actually tried relatively hard to try and make sure that they are closed and you know, the hiring of hiding and wiring and things of that nature, I think do a fairly good job in trying to limit their visual appearance whilst they're not actually operating.
Councillor Kelly.
I'm not quite sure if this is a question for the Heritage, but I'll ask him, and if not, this can be directed later. For you, Chair, so just to be clear, this is for 2 screens only, and of this size only. So if approval was given, all of a sudden a bigger screen couldn't be put up, because as we all know, these screens go to a lot bigger than this particular size. So it was going to be very definitive in the exact size and also to the exact location. Could they all of a sudden be sort of swung around and pushed left, right or whatever? So that's sort of 2 questions I'd like sort of some resolution on. Because I could see that very easily changed. You know, screens get upgraded or gets broken, oh, let's put a bigger one up actually, or the like. Would that be conditioned on those 2 points, the precise location and the precise size?
Through you, Chair, perhaps I can answer that one. So planning permits are issued on the basis that the approved use or development is substantially in accordance with the application. So here we have an application which has TVs of a certain size and location. If one of them broke and they had to replace it and it was 5 centimetres wider, I imagine that would be substantially in accordance with the permit. So there's a tiny bit of wriggle room, right. But they certainly couldn't go out and get, you know, triple the size and, you know, relocate it completely. So there there is some wriggle room, but there are also constraints. I hope that's
And the
not
positioning
true.
of it as well? So they can't sort of move them around and push them anywhere in that perimeter?
Sorry, through your chair. They might be slightly adjustable, which would be okay, but they couldn't kind of relocate them.
I just I could see this being a potential problem.
So is there another question?
Only, no.
Oh, okay. If you can ask the question sort of commentary, I think, instead of a conversation, I would appreciate. Lord Mayor.
Sorry, this is for the director.
Okay. So any more questions to our officer, the heritage officer? No? Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. You may take your seat. All right. Any questions now to the acting director planning?
Yeah, sorry, I am still a bit concerned about, I know it sort of might be going into occupation licence, but I'm just wondering whether there should be a change of use if we have any concerns that this is being used more as a gambling venue than as a dining venue. Because I notice on the fences, it's got TAB in several on all entry points into this area. So to me, that reads as though this is a TAB venue. So shouldn't and the TV screens are a sort of integral part of the TAB service because you have to watch and be able to bet. And it's very clear that the TAB is on the outdoor area. So why aren't we assessing this as in terms of a change of use?
Through your chair, the application's not made on that basis. It is our obligation to classify what's being applied for in the use, appropriate use, and the planners, when they reviewed the application, were satisfied that the activities proposed by putting up 2 screens wasn't a change to the use that's already been approved.
But the little signs that say TAB on every single entrance point into this outdoor area, doesn't that indicate that it's a gambling venue?
Through your chair, that's not our view. It certainly hasn't, the application hasn't been made on that basis.
Any other questions? Councillor Fasol.
One question to the director. If these screens were, just harking back to my primary school days, rolled out, they would not require planning approval, would they? If they, as opposed to a fixed screen?
Through you, Chair, but potentially not. That might not be. So planning regulates use and development. We've taken the view that this is development because of the way that they are attached to the structures. You know, you wouldn't need planning approval for a kettle, for example, that you plug in and unplug. So, yep.
Kick off debate, Chair.
Do you want to ask another question?
Debate.
No, I think Alderman Zuko was before that. Thank
yes,
you.
Look, I understand that the application is for refusal, but I've read points 1 and points 2 in respect of the refusal that the sign, 2 television signs do not meet the criteria in 25.1 and do not meet the criteria in 25.14. But I believe these are very unique. This is a very unique application because the signage is actually not advertising, whether it be sport, whether it be anything other than within the confines of the occupation licence. Even though they may have to seek a change of occupation licence, it's not as if they're advertising outwardly, nor are they advertising whether it be just sport or anything on an external basis. So the intent is to have those signs, television signs, specifically for the clientele that actually go there, not the people that are walking up and down the street. Now, I actually looked at the report and I read the report very, 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 very carefully. And I believe there's very much argument in the sense of whether or not they do or do not meet the criteria. Because it says here in 3.2, installation of 2 42-inch TVs housed inside heavy steel cases and facing inwards, just like I'm saying. So then,
just to draw your attention, at present we don't have any motion.
Okay, well,
So I'm
I'll
just
move,
wondering because
that in accordance to point 1 and 2, they are approved on the basis that there is argument as to whether or not the 2 clauses of refusal are relevant. And on that basis, I seek approval with conditions imposed by the officers, and to add a condition that the TV screens are screened on the back to the satisfaction of the director. So I'll move
that. Can I just get that clarified so that everybody clear of that particular motion?
Okay, I'll keep on going now if I may. Then it goes to 6.3. The existing use is hotel. And there's a lot of argument as to whether or not hotels can have gambling. All hotels can have gambling, if it is gambling. The proposed, this isn't gambling, direct gambling, this is actually showing sport, predominantly sport by what we heard Mr. Brownless point out. And also, actually, we could even, if we wanted to, and I'll just give it some thought whether I add it, is we could probably have a time factor on it to a certain time at night as well, but that's something I'll give thought through as I argue. A hotel use is discretionary use in the activity area. Isn't that ironic? It's a discretionary use at the moment. So all hotels right across Salamanca are all discretionary use. But it keeps on going and says a proposal does not intensify the existing approved discretionary use. So if what is proposed is not intensifying what is there, how can it be detrimental? Because the argument here is heritage, of course, isn't it? Then we go to the performance criteria. It must be capable of forming an integral part of the streetscape without appearing dominant. These 2 screens are not dominant unless you are actually within distance of them or inside. They're not dominant because all you're seeing at the moment is the back of screens. There's nothing you can see other than when you're inside. So the dominance is inside. Then it goes, the proposed signs are somewhat enclosed within the outdoor dining area. Again, the report of our officers are reconfirming that they can't be dominant, are tucked below the umbrella and are not directly attached to the building on the premises to which they relate. So it continues on to say, as such, the most noticeable to pedestrians is walking past through the side of close proximity, just what I said, or if you're within. So that's when you get to see the signs. So there's no effect to any child walking past because you've got to be inside. When you actually look at and the reason why I actually made the point of the screening, because when you look at the photo, it's when you're right up close you can see the darkness of the TV. Those TVs could be screened in such a manner that actually it blends in with the structure, and that can be easily rectified by the appropriate person. Then we go down to the 25.14, and it says, with regards to interactive signs, it states, it must be capable of forming an integral part of the streetscape without appearing dominant. Well, it's already been said by our council officer, they're not dominant. So how can 25.1 actually play a part in a refusal? And then it goes on, must not detract from the cultural or architectural significance or amenity of the place, of a place or building. The whole entire Salamanca, at least by 60 to 70%, is an entertainment precinct, so how is it taking away from place? So again, 25.14 does not play. I'm sorry. What we need to be doing is go on to Pulse, read what they're saying on Pulse. The other thing is too, there was not one objection to this. I am mystified that people don't understand that Salamanca is an entertainment precinct. What we should be doing with places like this, what we should be doing is embracing this type of activity to get some people out and enjoying the AFL football, and hopefully we're going to have an AFL team, enjoying soccer, enjoying all these sports, because that's what we should be getting people to enjoy, not just simply going to a bar and drinking all day. This is actually enjoying something in a bar. Oh, the last thing I want to say is this. I just came back from Hunya, and if anyone's ever been to Hunya, it is about 1.5 kilometres of Salamanca on steroids. It's the most amazing heritage area I've ever been to in the world that I could say, other than Rome and all those places. But as a waterfront, it's amazing, the activity, the hive, and all these beautiful heritage buildings. And there's TVs and buskers and everything happening. So I'm sorry, the argument of this heritage is not going to dwell with me, in particular that we allow a lot of other activity in Salamanca, and one of them being our parking meters.
Can I just, before we go any further, I want the motion to be read so everybody is clear what we are debating. I think there is, that clarity is required. Would you be able to either put it on the screen if it's possible? If not, then I can ask Councillor Zuko to put that so that everybody is clear what they're debating.
Through you, Chair, certainly. Perhaps if I can talk through the potential conditions in broad terms. First, the general condition which we apply to all permits, that use or development substantially in accordance with the documents and drawings that comprise the application. A condition that states TV screens are only to be used during the approved hours of operation, 12 noon to 10 p.m, 7 days a week. And also a condition that within 60 days of the date of the permit, the rear of the TV screens must be covered so that they blend into the surrounding streetscape to the satisfaction of the Director City Life.
Thank you.
Is everybody clear with that before we commence a debate and discussion? Everybody clear with the motion? Clear? All right. Now we're going to have first, it's Councillor Sherlock.
On the motion, sorry, question. The time, where did the times come from? The 10 p.m. switch off?
Through you, Chair, they are the existing approved operating hours.
Oh, operating hours for the actual venue? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Everybody clear on the motion, right? This is the first thing. Everybody clear on the motion? We need clarification. All right. Thank you very much. Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Through you. First of all, thank you to Mr Booth for his very thorough account of the definition of interactive signage and making us aware of what the completeness of the whole with regards to why it's been categorised in that way. So thank you very much for that. I do also want to thank the applicants for their very passionate accounts of why they think it's appropriate to have these signage, or TVs, I'm just going to call them TVs. So just a few things I did want to go through. It's already been stated by Alderman Zuko, and look, I'm happy with some of what Alderman Zuko has said, and I did just want to point out a few things though with regards to some things that he said, which is number one, there was no objections or representations. For me, that's not indicative of complying to the scheme. And to me, that's not something that sways me in terms of the discretion that I'm entitled to apply. However, what does really move me is what's been pointed out at 6.7.4 when we just 3 points really for me. There are several points there, but I think three that's really important for me is the individual or cumulative effect of the sign or signs on the building and or surrounding area, considering its effect and means of attachment on places of cultural significance. Secondly, the effect of the sign on the safety and security of the premises and the area, and the effect of the sign on pedestrian movement and safety. So I did just want to go through that in terms of performance criteria that's been outlined at 6.7.4 and some of the commentary that's been noted there at 6.7.5, which to me sways the way that I'm going to vote, and it's this. Whilst not necessarily in character with the local area or the types of signs prevailing along the front of Salamanca Place, and not necessarily a form of interpretive sign that would be expressly encouraged in the area, the impact of the signs is considered to be minimal, particularly given the enclosed nature of the space and the fact that the screens are primarily intended to be viewed by patrons within and not to attract the attention of those outside the site. The signs are unlikely to generate or have any undue effect on the safety and security of the premises, particularly given their limited operation and robust construction. The signs are unlikely to unduly impact the adjacent road or public way. Pedestrian movement and safety should be unhindered, although there may be some potential for distraction at close proximity. In terms of the objectives of this schedule, given the enclosed and muted form, at least from the outside of the space, the signs do not necessarily intrude into, nor do they detrimentally affect the overall visual amenity of the area. And I think that's quite compelling for me. And as a result of the conditions that has been outlined, the time factor for the TV, it being covered as well when it's not been in use, I really do consider that I may potentially support Alderman Zuko's motion to have it approved, and would happily second that motion as well. Thank you very much.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Firstly, how many sports bars do we have in the area? I think is this the only sports bar?
Through your chair? I don't know. That might be a question of the applicant that seems to have a better understanding than I do.
How many down there? One other? Two sports bars? Yep, okay. Yep. Look, signage in Salamanca has been restricted through you, Chair, for a long time, and that's why we don't have the franchises down there, because they can't put up their big gaudy signs. There's no way in hell we'd ever get the Golden Arches sign up on the building down there or whatever. And I remember a number of years ago, even, and I might have started it, a number of years ago there was controversy about the Legs and Breasts building and what sort of signage they wanted, and the negotiation for a sign to make it subtle and blend into the heritage nature of the area. So I think we've got a pretty good handle on keeping crass signage out of Salamanca, and I think most of the signs on the buildings down there fit within, a certain acceptable signage, and I think most of the signs really respectable to Salamanca. So the current existing signs have all complied with what's going on, but with regard to TVs, I don't see them as signs. I don't think these are signs. Not in my mind. It might be new ground that we need to explore about what happens when people start to want bigger and more TVs outside of their buildings. But that bridge will get crossed down the track, I think, or now that we've got something on the books here, we'll be thinking about that. I appreciate the motion from Alderman Zuko with the amendment to cover the back of the sign, as long as the back of the TV, as long as there's no advertising on the back of the TV. Yeah.
Through you, I can add no signage in the back of the TV. That was never intent. It's not a double whammy.
Have you finished?
No.
Okay.
So, in effect, I don't find this offensive at all, and I'm happy to support the motion for approval. The TVs are facing in. I don't see it as any sort of crass signage. I just think it's okay in my mind. While I might prefer to sit in a quiet place rather than have TVs blaring at me, but that's a choice, and people make their own choices. And finally, I'd like to know where Alderman Zuko went again. What was the name of that place?
Hanya. I'm serious.
Where is it?
It's in Crete.
Please make sure.
It's a question. It's a question. Through the chair.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Give me the country.
Hanya, Crete.
Crete. Yeah.
It is the most amazing place you'll ever see. It's Salamanca on steroids.
Okay. All right. So I'll be supporting the motion for approval.
Assault.
Thank you, Chair. So a quick Google, which is always a first point of call for many, many of us, not us, us more broadly. Now, a sign, a notice on public display that gives information or instructions in written or symbolic form. They're not signs, and the planning scheme doesn't cover it the planning scheme doesn't cover it. And so we find ourselves in a position of trying to assess it against stuff that's been a planning scheme requirement that's been set out specifically to assess signage, but it's not a sign, so the whole exercise is fundamentally flawed. And I think if it's not in the planning scheme, there is a concession from planning staff that we should take a look at it and that we should determine as a council. It's almost like we're acting more as a council than the planning authority in this instance, because I don't think that this is covered in the planning scheme. And so this is a bit of a test of public sentiment for what is acceptable and appropriate in the Salamanca precinct and what is not. And to me, the huge screen that just continually rolls Sky advertising nonsense day in, day out in Salamanca Place is far more offensive, it's far more prominent, and yet it doesn't need permission. But somehow we've determined that these screens do need permission. I think that in itself is a real issue with what we have before us. All of the elements that Councillor Sherlock and Alderman Zuko and Councillor Harvey indeed have pointed out are all completely valid. And if we want to talk about heritage fabric, you know, this was an area that was historically whalers and prostitutes, and it was pretty rough. What is the heritage of it? Like, we let the white umbrellas go up, we let, 2024 model cars park in front, we've got heating elements that I assume don't need planning permission to go into the umbrellas. And as Alderman Zuko points out, our very own attractive parking meters in that strip. So places will mould and shape as society moves on. Yeah, there's no prostitutes or brothels or sailors down there anymore, but this is what people want now. People want to be able to have a beer and watch a game of sport. And certainly I have also enjoyed watching Soccer World Cup in Belgium and in France in historic heritage strips with TVs outside, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So I will be supporting Alderman Zuko's motion, and I look forward to heading down to the venue to watch some Formula One one day and have a beer.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberger.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I think pretty much it's all been said already. For me, the most important thing is that in the documentation we have, it says the impact of the signs, if they are signs, is considered to be minimal. I really do value our heritage, but I personally can see no problem with these screens. They're inward facing, they face sideways. If you're standing across Salamanca looking at it, you probably can't even see them. The screening of them, as suggested by Alderman Zuko, is a good idea, and I certainly support that as well. I just can see no reason to knock these back. I think Councillor Posselt's made a good point, really. It seems that they're a very difficult issue because they don't quite fit into the planning scheme. Be that as it may, as I said, I personally also agree. I think the impact of the signs is minimal, and I will be supporting the motion to approve them.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. This is one of these classic areas where something new's coming in, or it's been emerging over the decades, and the planning scheme hasn't quite caught up with it. Everything's been said, pretty much agree. I mean, look at the white picket fence out the front. You've got all these other things happening there. Not that two wrongs make a right, but I don't think it's fair to either to it's not up to this applicant. It's not his problem if everyone else decides to put flat screen TVs along the whole strip there. So it's not very fair to sort of ask that as a question of what's going to happen, and are they creating a precedent? So I will support this application, and as the amended one by Zuko as well, Alderman Zuko. And if the planning scheme's got to be changed, if everyone else starts popping up with TVs along the strip, well, so be it, and that's got to happen. But in its current form, I don't think it's very fair to knock this back at all. So I will support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Bloomfield.
It's interesting listening to the debate today, establishing that it's based on the way these TVs themselves fit in rather than what they screen. And ultimately, I think we seem to be coming to a conclusion, or at least from my point of view, if they are tidied up to fit in a little bit better, then we are actually probably going to be okay, or at least I'll be okay with that. The thing that I do take exception to is the fact that where there's sport, there's TAB, and we have the two together. Now, I appreciate that this is not a bar that has probably got tote there, and that's fine, but that also implies that that the people there are being encouraged to use TAB on their phones, but we actually have no other control element there. Normally what would happen is in the toilets and places like that, you'd have responsible gaming and so forth to at least encourage those who are being encouraged to use TAB because they're watching the TV with sport. We have nothing, I would suspect, sadly. That concerns me. I wanted to highlight that purely because I don't think it's necessarily today's issue, but it's certainly an issue I think we should be taking very seriously. And other than that, if we can have this tidied, I'd be happy to approve.
Thank you. Lord Mayor.
Before I speak, can I just seek some advice about whether we could add a condition to remove the TAB signs that are on the outside of the fence, indicating that the area is a place for gambling?
Through you, Chair, we could certainly clarify in the permit that this is only approval for these two signs, and these two signs, and any other unapproved signs should be removed, or something along those lines.
Look, I'm happy to add that if there's any other unapproved signs under regulation, that the director has the authority to have them removed.
Everybody happy with that inclusion?
And may I just add?
Yeah.
Through your question to the director, isn't there an actual signage size that you need to put an application in? Is that correct or incorrect, or is it different at Salamanca?
Sorry, perhaps Mr. Eichen can assist.
Through you, Chair, it really depends on the type of sign. So in Sullivan's Cove planning scheme, it's not quite as straightforward as so
That's the question I asked, whether it's different at Salamanca, that's all. Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, the condition will say that any other small advertising signage on the outside of the occupation licence fencing that hasn't been approved will have to be, is not approved as part of this.
Anyway.
Subject to the directors.
Well, they're up at the moment.
I said subject to the director. The director will make that call.
Yeah. Is that okay? It's clear?
I think that's
Everybody
clear.
happy with that? Inclusion and Alderman Zucker accepted that in. Thank you. Do you want to speak to it now? Lord Mayor.
Oh, look, I'm happy to, and on this occasion, back in the officer's recommendation. And I'm not sure. I mean, people are sort of saying there's nothing in the report that would lead us to approve this, but the report's very clear that this does not meet the Sullivan's Cove planning scheme. I think the Sullivan's Cove planning scheme is a really important one. Salamanca Place is a very important one. I do have concerns about this not, and I'm happy to take the professional advice of our planners that this is not, that it does detract from the character and heritage value of the listed buildings, that it does not form an integral part of the streetscape and detracts from the cultural and architectural significance or amenity of the place or the listed building. I think the officers have given us very clear advice on that. So I'm not sure what everyone else is talking about saying there's nothing in here to sort of suggest we would refuse it. Let's be clear, our officers have given us very clear advice that it should be refused. So, and we generally try and follow that advice, and we often talk about the importance of following planning advice. And there is reason for that. I think some of the other things that people have talked about are really kind of irrelevant to the fundamental issue of does this meet our planning scheme. We have planning rules. We don't sort of make our decisions based on Pulse FM. It is based on the professional advice of our planning staff. People can enjoy watching their sports indoors. There are already several screens indoors, and no one's suggesting any of that's taken away. But our professional officers' advice is that outdoors it shouldn't be dominant and it must not detract. And their advice and their assessment, and I'm happy to back it in, is that that these particular things do. I do also have, I do believe that actually it should have been assessed as an electronic signage for commercial purposes, and that's very clear that it has to be prohibited. It is for commercial purposes. This is there for the purpose of running a bar. Potentially it seems as though it may be for getting people to come in and maybe even place a bet, but I'm glad we've dealt with that now maybe a bit. And so, yeah, I think in terms of planning, it's very clear. And I appreciate that at the moment, it's not a particularly, it's only one business that's got this, and there isn't a proliferation of these facilities all around Salamanca, but I do have concerns that we are setting a particular tone for the precinct with this, and other venues may well want to have electronic signs and TVs, and I guess this does set a bit of a precedent. I totally agree with the comments made about some of the general design of our outdoor streetscape. I think it has all got pretty messy down there. Some of the fences, some of the umbrellas. I think it'd be good for elected members to get a bit of a history of that. But I know that the council did have aspirations to actually move some of the occupation licences away from the building, as is the case in the other block further, is it north? And the reason for that was because all of the kind of infrastructure around these occupation licences is detracting from the buildings. At this stage, I think that whole process has been stalled for the southern part of Salamanca, but the northern end of Salamanca, it was a really good result to actually move all the occupation licence umbrellas and fences and stuff away from the building, so that you get a nicer pedestrian experience, you get a better view of the buildings. So look, I appreciate that this isn't the only challenging element to our occupation licences, but I do think we need to, I hear the Director of Planning's feedback that the compliance team, will have to grapple with the issues of TVs in occupation licences. This will be one of the first, and that could be problematic. That's obviously a separate area, but I would like to stay in touch with that as well. But purely on the planning, which is what we're here to do, not to sort of comment generally on, street life, encouraging our nightlife, encouraging good design. If we look at what the planning officers have recommended, it is for refusal, and I'm happy to support their advice on this occasion.
Thank you, Deputy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I think it's been an interesting discussion, and there are pros and cons with this application, or retrospective application, which is interesting in itself. I find it difficult just to make a point that when we have a motion to make a planning decision, the planning decision sits with us tonight, and we're making a decision about something we've had read out. So we haven't had it in front of us, and sometimes these can be quite complicated. I think that in future, Chair, if there is something that's against what the officer recommendation is, that we make sure that we have the bones of a motion rather than just something that's thrown together at the last minute. The other thing is, I want to talk about the occupational licences that we have in front of Salamanca, and we know that that's fantastic for business. We have multiple paraphernalia in those occupational licences. We have umbrellas, we have built-in heaters. It's very permanent looking in some of these. We've even got fire pits, and now we're considering essentially TV screens. And I think, as the Lord Mayor has said, this is something that we really do need to get our heads around. The TV screen in front of the Mercury, I presume, is on private property, and that's why it can be where it is, as dominant and as hideous as some of the things on it are, as Councillor Purcell has pointed out. But tonight, we've been given two sides of the coin in relation to this application, and whilst I think some of those conditions have helped it, as far as I can see without seeing it, I am also concerned about seeing not only this signage, but TV, basically greyhounds, horse racing, things that people are going to bet on, football, that is something that is of concern in Salamanca. And perish the thought, if we have a multitude of these screens outside in our occupational licence areas. So I think this is really quite a step in the wrong direction for Salamanca myself. But from a planning perspective, I think there are grounds, because of what Salamanca really is and means, that this in my mind, can be refused.
Any other? No other speaker? I just want to make some final comments myself. Thank you, everybody, for the contributions that you have made. And as has been pointed out, a number of comments made really don't relate to the planning rules. And I think that is a significant point for us to remember. We all want to support what's going on. We want everybody to look at sports and come and enjoy. But that is not the criteria, unfortunately, that we are looking at. When we're making a planning decision, we're looking at the planning rules, and we have to satisfy ourselves, does it meet the planning rule? So having heard the debate and the experiences that people have, it is my role as well as a elected member to look at it from a planning lens. Now, I look at it and I see, according to the officer, made the recommendation, and it is a very objective way of looking at it, asking us and giving us the challenge to say, now, look at it this way, whether this detracts from the character and the heritage value. And when we answer those questions, whether it detracts, the report clearly says it does. Now, there is the argument, alternative argument, no, it doesn't. And that's where I have difficulty with. The second question that we have to address under the planning scheme is the number 2 point, and it is whether it forms an integral part of the streetscape. Now, I went there and had a look at it this afternoon. And again, for me to interpret that as our officer has, I would want to support that. But I can also have a different interpretation. And that's where we are able to make the distinction. Now, I am more inclined, on the basis of the evidence and the report that I have read on planning matters under those 2 clauses, to not support the recommendation. That is my position as well. Now, I will put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Okay, those in favour, can you put your hand up, please? Alderman Zuko.
Councillor Kelly, Alderman Bluefield, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Harvey,
And those against?
Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor and
Thank you. The motion has been carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your contributions. We move on. So now, just a question of the elected members. Do you want to take a break, complete break for 5 minutes, or you want to continue? Okay. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda, 6.2.1, 512 Nelson Road, and we have two representatives in here. And so the first one we have is Lynette Taylor. Is Lynette here? Please come up to the front and use the mic. Take the seat, and you have 5 minutes. And then when you have 30 seconds left, I will let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I do have some handouts. I don't know whether I can. I'm not sure about how all this works. I don't think I've got enough. I'm just have an objection to the development of the property in Wilson Road. And I'll just read this out.
Thank you. Yeah.
So my husband and I have owned the property at 492 Nelson Road for 35 years. To manage the stormwater coming from the free properties between Nelson Road and us, as well as what is now the Ribbon Gum Court development, we installed French drains across our boundaries to divert the water away from our home site. This had been very effective, and if you look at the front photo of the satellite photo, you can see our home and where it's placed in the situation. Come 2015, Ribbon Gum Court was developed and the stormwater provisions involving a two-swale system was designed and implemented. This has been a total failure, with our land being inundated with water from the east-west swale, and you can see on that photo where the east-west swale is. And you may have read the GHD report from 2016, which we had commissioned. It was a similar project being envisaged then. I note in the GMG report, which is the current engineering report, that this also applies to the north-south swale, citing poor construction and maintenance, none of which has been done in 8 years. With this new development, according to the GMG report, it is estimated that 0.74 cubic metres per second of water will enter the development site from elsewhere, and combined with the 0.55 cubic metres per second from the development site, a total of 1.29 cubic metres per second. All this, in addition to the water flow from Ribbon Gum Court, will barrel into the swale junction at the southwest corner of our property, causing the east-west swale to back up. And you can see there's a photo of the junction there with our tank, and behind that is the shed, which is, you can also see in a photo there. As our drainage system is at capacity, we are unable to provide any more capacity due to the nature of the underlying structure of the ground in this area of Mount Nelson. And you can see from the photos that there's lots of rocks and stone and things. So, and that may be one of the reasons why the swales were poorly constructed. I'm not sure whether they can use blasting to rectify this. So you can see the photos there of the rocks. If the proposed new development is to be anything like that of Ribbon Gum Court, you will note that the houses are large and in the photo, and together with drives and hard stands, do not allow for gardens and trees. Only a single tree has been planted since development at the front of that Ribbon Gum Court development. There will be no soaking of water into the ground, thus allowing all this concentrated water to be funnelled into our direction and possibly causing destabilisation of the foundations of our shed and workshop garage. There has been no area plan. We object to this because there has been no area plan put forward that we are aware of encompassing this type of concentrated development, which includes both sewage and stormwater. And my husband, in another, referred to the sewage problem that our neighbours are having, in that it keeps, on a regular basis, the manhole keeps popping off and the sewage, which also impacts on our property because it runs down our drive. All is done ad hoc, according to developers' wishes, with costly redress to those affected, in that we had to build the drains to be able to put up our shed, because these drains were council approved. There is surely a more intelligent way of developing this extra special site, and it isn't a special site. It's got lots of trees on it at the moment.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
And I would assume that there'd be native animals there and birds, because we've got native animals on our property. So that's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Now, any questions, elected member, Deputy Lord Mayor?
Thank you. Thanks for your deputation. I'm just wondering about the heavy rain events.
Well, we did have most of the rain, and which we've referred to, has not been. It's been normal rain, which we had summed up in our GHD report. It was normal rain, and we were inundated. But heavy rain, like the 100-year storm that we had, it just completely washed out our bank on the fill site. So we just had to put up with it.
And so, just could you just say how often this has occurred? Like, is it since the
swale? The swales, since the swale, we had it all sorted before the swales, but since the swale, because they're not working properly, and the one that goes east to west is sort of like a saucer on its side, and it just rolls. Even today, there will be water coming over that swale and going onto our property.
So just for clarification, is that since the ribbon gum development?
Yes,
Right,
yes,
okay.
we had our...
But does that water go across the subdivision land? Does it travel towards?
Well, it's
ribbon gum?
piped in the front of that subdivision. It's piped, and it all comes to a head on our southwest corner boundary.
Councillor Harvey.
Oh, look, similar questions. Just the history of the flooding issue or the drainage issue. Was it also prior to the ribbon court?
No, because when we built when we bought the property, there was a sort of like a rivulet, not a rivulet, just a drainage thing across Ribbon Gum Court, which wasn't called that then, and there was a little dam next door there, and it trickled over our property, and we had French drains put across to prevent that and capture that water and drain it down into our land. So
there was a natural watercourse that did cross your property as well as the other land?
Yep.
And has that been kept above ground, or that was all piped?
Well, we had, for us, we had French drains, and then it was piped from the
What exactly is a French drain?
It's a trench with like blue stone in it. And
a line trench, yeah.
Yeah. And we have it right across the top boundary of our property, which diverts the water around where our house is. But since the Ribbon Gum Court development and the swales, it's just, it'll be doing it today. It'll be running over under our fence and into the drains that we put in to have, but it only takes so much. And with this new development, it's going to overwhelm us, I think, and undermine the foundations of the shed. So, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Luberg.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, thank you for coming in. Do you know who's responsible for the proper operation of the swales?
Well, I'm not sure. I assume it's council.
I'll ask that question again later.
Yeah, I assume it's council. So the swales have all been covered in weeds and growth, and so from became a bad situation to even worse because the water doesn't run. So it needs maintenance, and they both will. There's 2 swales. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very much, Lynette Taylor.
I just have one. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Do you know of other properties in your street or in? I keep forgetting what it's called. Ribbon Gum Court that are affected as well.
Well, it's not Ribbon Gum Court. We're not in Ribbon Gum Court. If you look at the satellite photo,
yep,
you'll see where we are. We're the one with the red house.
Mm.
And we're adjacent to Ribbon Gum Court. Yep.
Okay, so you don't know of anybody in Ribbon Gum Court that might have similar flooding or stormwater issues?
They've got the drains. The drains have been provided in Ribbon Gum Court. Yeah.
No further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
You
Can go back to your seat. Thank you. And our next representative is Amy Lee Shang. Hope I pronounced your name properly, and if I haven't, please correct me. So both of you speaking, or just one of you?
Hi everyone, thank you for giving me this opportunity to represent against the subdivision plan at 512 and 514 Nelson Road. So we are the property owners of 512A Nelson Road. So the proposal is to demolish our next door house, 514, and replace it with a public road. So this forces us to become a corner lot house with 46 lengthy frontage with the proposed road. So we are against this proposal because number one, I do not think it passed the acceptable solutions for the secondary frontage setbacks according to cost 12.4.2 A1. This opinion was clearly pointed out in the council report on page 28, item 6.8.2 and 6.83. It clearly says the proposal does not comply with the acceptable solutions for the secondary frontage setbacks under clause 12.4.2 A1. Therefore, assessment using the performance criteria is relied on. And then the assessment is using as example, like, because there's a nearby similar example in Ribbon Gum Court, because, there are 2 houses there, 504 and 500. They are slightly close to the secondary frontage. Therefore, it's justified for the performance criteria. I have a fundamental issue with this argument because I think it has a fundamental flaw. If you read the performance criteria, it says very clearly you need to be compatible with existing buildings to the road. Ribbon Gum Court has nothing to do with the new existing road. They are on a different street, they are not relevant. We are, and 512A, and then our next door neighbor 506, we are the legitimate rightful existing buildings to the new proposed road. So I don't think the assessment using Ribbon Gum Court as an example should pass. And secondary, I also want to point out, the planning scheme is a performance-based scheme. It is not a case-based scheme. You cannot use a bad example in the past to justify approvals for the future. As that lady already mentioned out, there are so many complaints about the stormwaters and sewage issues. You cannot use this a bad example to justify an approval for the future. If we do this, this is a fundamental damage to the foundations of the scheme because we are not a case-based scheme. The other points I want to make is, as I also mentioned in my representation letter, you know, our house is so close to the entry, it's only 1.5 meters. We are really worrying, you know, a vehicle lose control and collide into our master bedroom when our tenants are still sleeping. That would be really a disaster. So we have asking for a little bit barrier protection. And on page 59, you know, they mention about a W being low safety barrier system to protect residents at 5128 from out-of-control vehicle, but it has never been put in the conditional report. It's just mentioned, but there's no guarantee. The third point is, you know, I think the subdivision is very unfair to us. We didn't ask for this subdivision, but we bear most of the damage, you know, thinking about where there will be traffic noise, waste emission, loss of privacy, loss of enjoyment in the outside doors, and then you know, during the night the highlight will have a negative impact on our house, and you know, the construction site noise and dust. So it is very unfair for us. And then we have been asking to put what's that called? Like noise reduction and privacy protection. I think it's very fair to ask, but you know, the report says it is our responsibility to seek independent advice. I think that's
30 seconds left.
all right. Okay. So the last point is, you know, on page 68, the council make a lengthy provision to protect council infrastructure, but why, you know, we're right next to the construction site. Why we are not included in the protection? In summary, I think I reject this proposal because it doesn't pass the action. It doesn't pass the doesn't comply with acceptable solutions and doesn't pass the performance criteria for the secondary frontage bondage setbacks. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, quickly, I want to add, so if you look at this satellite, you know, image, the mapping, so our house is on the left, and the blue one is going to be demolished, and you can see that corner is 1.5 meter from the boundary, and that's
thank
our
you so
master
much.
bedroom. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We will have questions now. You were given 5 minutes, and she's spoken. Thank you so much. So just a clarification, Councillor Luberger.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, Amy, thanks for coming in. Thanks for providing us with some extra information as well. That's really handy. You sort of talk about a couple of the things that would make you feel better about this, some protections. Have you spoken to the applicant about that at all? Has the applicant spoken to you at all?
Oh, you mean a developer?
Yes.
Well, you know, no, I haven't.
Thank you. And just one further question, Chair, through you. If there was a chance of doing some mediation with the applicant, would you be keen to enter into some sort of mediation about the issues that you have with them?
Yes. If it's an official channel and if it is written in the conditional permit, yes, we are happy to accept the mitigation. But if it's unofficial, you know, I want to make sure, yeah, it is.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Lord Mayor.
Thank you for your representation. I'm not sure whether you've read all of the planning report that's been provided with the agenda, but on page 132 of that, or I think it's page 59 of the planning report, it does talk about further discussions with neighbours and council officers have been held, and that the fencing be positioned alongside the boundaries. Was that the discussions with you?
That's what I talk about. Yeah, but it looks like, you know, the report is kicking the balls to somebody else.
And then, so in that, it does suggest that whilst the impact of the new road's understood, it's not a matter that can be addressed through the subdivision process under the provisions of the planning scheme. And it's a matter that's best dealt with through the Boundary Fences Act, and it's suggesting that you are encouraged to seek your own legal advice about your options. So, do you envisage that you could actually? What would you? Do you have any sense about what you would do to get a fence constructed?
This is what I'm trying to say. I think, you know, I shouldn't be seeking independent advice. I should be approached by the developer, and then he should seek a way to alleviate the harm he does to us. So I don't think it's our job. We should go out and looking for solutions. I think they cause the harm. It's their responsibility to approach us and offer a mitigation.
Yeah, so yeah, it is. Were you surprised to learn that our planning scheme doesn't require a fence be built between a residential property and a new road?
Well, if that's the case, I would just totally reject the proposal because it doesn't satisfy the solution. It doesn't satisfy performance criteria.
Yeah, this is the Hobart City Council own kind of planning scheme, so we are not talking about something different. It's your own planning scheme. The setback doesn't meet the minimum requirement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I will recommend to totally reject this proposal.
Any other questions? Deputy.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for your presentation and thanks for showing us around the other day and your concerns. So you are concerned about the road going directly past your house, which I understand that. You do gain that right of way so that nobody will be travelling over the right of way at the back of on the other side of your property. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, this is the reason why they have to remove the right of way, because on the page 26 of their plan, PLN-28-08, they mention that there is only one access with the proposed subdivision. Therefore, it complies with clause E6.71A1, number of vehicle access of the scheme. If they do not remove the right of way, there will be 2 access points. Yeah. And then it is against what they claim. They say they only have 1 access point. Yeah, so if they don't remove it, the whole plan will be at odds with clause E6.71, number of... And
presumably, Amy, that right of way was too narrow for any access because it's only, it's probably only 3 or 4 or 5 metres across, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not talking about this because I know it has been put in the conditions. Yeah. So I'm okay. I'm happy with this being removed.
When we went up the other day, you talked about having a barrier at the corner of your house for one as any sort of mitigating factor, and I'll discuss that, ask the officers around that as well. And I take the point about the secondary and primary frontages. You would think that Nelson Road was the primary frontage, but here we are looking at that as a secondary frontage for this development, as I understand it. You also talked a bit about the safety in relation to entrance into the proposed subdivision from Nelson Road. Can you just explain some of that, please?
If like this map shows, my master bedroom is so close, at low entrance. It's only 1.5 meters. And if,
all the cars coming in from
the making turns into the street, they may lose control and then they may collide into my boundary.
And the lot owner of 516, the next door neighbor, and when we talk with them, she also clearly, expressed her concern about this safety. Yeah.
Yeah. If like kids playing in the back, in the front yard, a vehicle coming, collide into their front yard when kids are playing in there, that's a serious safety issue.
And one last question, if I may. So, do you have any sort of problems with stormwater in relation to the current property?
Not from us, but like I said, Ribbon Concord has a lot of issues. We talk to the people living in River Concord, and then they have complaining about the storage and stormwater. They say they have called multiple times for them to come, and they say even the mayor has been there. I don't know, but yes, people in River Concord has clearly complained.
Yeah, we walked past some dams. Do they often have water in them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sheila.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the information that you've given us today. Some of the questions Deputy Lord Mayor has already asked, so I won't go through that again. I did just want to touch on one final point, though, just with regards to the comment that the Lord Mayor made regarding the fence. So, sorry, I wasn't quite understanding what your issue was with the fence, because the planning scheme obviously is completely separate to the Boundary Fences Act. So when you want, so I wasn't...
I want the council to write conditional report or whatever that the developer should seek mitigation with us. And then we can talk about, how we fix the fence issue.
Yeah, so I think that's where the confusion lies, is that that's not an issue for the planning scheme, it's an issue that's resolved between property owners under the Boundary Fences Act. So when you mitigate between the two property owners, or that is covered under the Boundary Fences Act. Not sorry, that's
here
the
is
issue.
Here is not simply say set up a fence. It's about because you turn the house into the public road. So then there's the traffic noise, there's the privacy stuff. So that's the reason we are seeking a proper fence. This is not only our concern but also the property owner of 516. Yeah. So it's we kind of make a. Say if this got approved, so this should be addressed.
Yeah, I mean theoretically, I think it doesn't pass those acceptable solutions and performance criteria. I think it should be rejected, considering there are about 10, a very wide community representation against this, and considering the environment damage it brings to people. I think this proposal should be rejected.
Thank you for answering that. I just wanted to clarify that, that issue just with regards to the fence is an issue under the Boundary Fences Act.
And sorry, and also I just want to show a photo of native hens here.
We're just asking questions now. If someone's going to ask you a question, then you'll have the opportunity to. Any other questions? No questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your deputation. You can go back to your seats. Okay, and we have the applicant, Matthew Clark. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chair. My name is Matt Clark. I'm the principal planner at JMG, and I'm representing the applicant Hard Developments on this project. So we've been working with council officers over a fairly long period of time on a fairly complicated site. Even though it's a sort of a fairly large, low-density residential site, it is internal. It does involve the demolition of a house to bring in a new public road to get accessibility for the site. The site has a number of natural values which we've needed to protect, and the site is also subject to significant bushfire risk, being on Nelson Road and adjacent to a large forested area. The servicing is somewhat complicated as well, in that it involves a number of other titles, and you'll notice that from the title of the application. Stormwater has been particularly tricky on this site, as in terms of the overall context. In very simple terms, stormwater from the catchment above the site discharges onto this site, and then we are required to then discharge that in the catchment below us. The works that have been proposed in the trench that have been discussed in 514 Nelson Road are within an existing council easement. I can't comment on the maintenance of that drain, but as a process of this application, that drain will be substantially improved. And there has been a considerable amount of hydrological modelling, both by ourselves but also by council's engineers, to ensure that works. There were a number of representations, so I'll just go through those issues quickly. One was one from Tas Fire Service. There has been some, it's slightly unusual, but Tas Fire put in a representation against their own accredited officer. But we've since had some discussions with Tas Fire, and there's been some amendments to the bushfire report, which has rectified the issue. The road adjacent to 512A, we have approached those owners. There's perhaps a little bit of misunderstanding as to the process of mediation within the overall process, but certainly we're happy to discuss putting a fence on their side of the property, and that can be a slightly heavier planked fence if required to help with acoustics. So we're certainly happy to look at those options. Whilst that is a Boundary Fences Act, because it's a public road, the fence, the owner will be council, and the fence under the Boundary Fences Act is the property of council, of the landowner. The council doesn't have an involvement in owning fences adjacent to public land. In terms of the construction impacts, a number of representatives mentioned those. One of the conditions refers to a construction management plan, which we're quite supportive of. In an internal environment like this, we've got a lot of neighbours, so we need to keep everybody happy. In terms of the stormwater, I've mentioned that those upgrades are all within existing easements, and the sewer connections that were discussed, there was some additional manholes which are also on other properties. Again, they're within Taswater easements, so we're really just connecting into those. There is a right-of-way which goes out the rear of the site, which was under the previous bushfire plan, was proposed as a fire trail. That is now no longer required by Tas Fire Service under their reconsideration of the bushfire plan, so that now is only a pedestrian right-of-way, and it really is up to council whether that pedestrian way will be enacted. There is some property right issues around making that connection, so it's really more for future protection of those rights for the moment. Boundary fencing.
Mr. Clark, you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Boundary fencing will be replaced and discussed with the other lot owners around the site. There were some discussions about that falling into disrepair, so we're certainly happy to talk about fencing. And natural values on the site, there is a residual balance lot that has some natural values which will be maintained, and the natural values of the site will be protected via a Part 5 agreement with council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Passol.
Thank you. A few questions on different aspects of the development. Just on the where you were mentioning about the fire trail and TFS no longer requiring it, can you just talk us through, there was concerns about the diameter, the outside diameter of the turning circle for fire trucks, and that the fire trail was part of that consideration for turning their vehicle so they could exit in the forward direction.
Sure.
How does that relate to the fire trail no longer being a fire trail?
Okay, so initially because we had a smaller than required cul-de-sac head, basically a standard cul-de-sac head, that didn't comply with the code, and so one solution was to just enable fire trucks to just continue through an existing right-of-way and through onto Luwinya Road. The Tas Fire Service has come back and said to us that if we use rollover curbs and provided that there's sufficient swept path, which there is, then they're happy with that. They would prefer that solution rather than having a separate fire trail.
A follow-up through you, Chair, which would then therefore require them to drop their front wheels onto the footpath over the roll curbs to get around the...
Yeah, that's a solution which Tas Fire does across the city.
And we would be responsible for the maintenance, the council would be responsible for the maintenance of those footpaths moving forward?
It's a public road.
Thank you. And the second question, which is a fairly simple question, what's the average size of the blocks in the...
They're 1,500 square metres.
Any other questions? Councillor Lulberger.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming in, Matthew. Just through you, Chair, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions just about the previous respondents. So you mentioned you were happy to have a chat to them about a noise reduction fence. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're happy to replace the fence that's there with a heavier, thicker timber planked fence, which is a standard solution for reducing acoustic impacts.
They're also concerned about the safety on the corner there, and they were sort of discussing a W-beam safety barrier. also okay with that, or talking to them about that?
There's been quite a lot of discussion with the council engineers over the design of that corner. There's a pedestrian crossing at that point as well, which is all part of the design. The curb design there is not a rollover curb. It's a standard curb. So I think that putting specific vehicular protection it would seem in this case to be a little bit overzealous.
And just one more question through you, Chair. Just with the drainage, we've sort of heard evidence that the swales down at number 12, running through number 12 Ribbon Court, don't seem to be working particularly well. Where are you going to be dumping the drainage water from this site? Is it going to ultimately enter those swales?
Yes, so that swale is sort of within a council easement. So the works that we are proposing is to increase the size of that channel so that it accommodates the required stormwater. That channel discharges into ultimately into a creek which runs all the way down to Kingston, so over quite a long distance, which is why the council stormwater officers chose not to do detention in this particular case, because it was unnecessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Deputy. Councillor Harvey, sorry, yes, I've got the name. My apologies. Yes.
Special point of whistling at you.
Thank you.
So, just sticking with the drainage for a while, I've witnessed the overflow into backyards in Ribbon Gum Court, and it's been a tough issue to resolve that. There's been a lot of effort that's gone into it because of the flow on, forgive the pun, of, further up the hill, other developments have exacerbated the flow of water across the land, and there's a lot, it's complex, as I understand. How confident are you that you can actually resolve it? And we've heard from the other representative about the issues they have. So I have concerns that this is a really complex problem that, you may be underestimating your ability to resolve it.
Firstly, I'm not a civil engineer or a hydrological engineer, so I'm a humble town planner. But look, I think that one of the problems that we have on this site is that we have water discharging into this site that is uncontrolled. This development, by putting in a public road, will control that stormwater, and certainly the improvement of the infrastructure downstream of the site will, by the modelling that's been undertaken by both ourselves and the council, it seems to indicate that problem would be resolved.
Okay, I've just got fears that the problem is possibly also uphill, rather than just on that particular block. That there's water coming from further up Mount Nelson Road as well that exacerbates the problem. But I don't know. I'm not a hydrologist either. I've just witnessed the problems that people have had with, streams running through their backyard. With regard to the balance lot, where exactly is the balance lot?
The balance lot is on sort of halfway down the proposed road on the western side.
So it's lot 17.
Yes, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And that will be left as it is, or it'll be improved?
Yes,
weeds
that'll
will be removed, junk will be removed off it?
Yes, effectively, yeah.
Any other questions, Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, and just with regard to, we've touched on the Tas Fire Service representation, just assure me again that that's been resolved.
Yes, so we've Tas Fire Service have re-looked at their accredited officers' bushfire report and the BAL rating, which they ascribe to the southern part of the site, has been they have downgraded that, which has meant that the building envelopes can move further within the lots that were proposed, and we have provided council with a plan that demonstrates how the revised lot configuration works. Those revised BAL ratings.
And finally, vegetation on the on the balance lot is secure.
Yes.
With regard to trees, there's not a number of huge old growth, or older trees on the whole area, but there's a condition to retain most of those trees. But I'm sure that condition was also applied to Ribbon Court as well. And I agree with the representative that there's no trees left on that site because everybody built really large houses to exploit all of their land. What are you envisaging on this site with regard to housing size and the removal of all the trees? Is it open slab that people can build what they want, or is there condition? Are you looking at it from we would rather people not occupy the entire block, even though they've got 1,500 metre blocks or whatever I think you said?
So I guess 2 points. One is that the conditions of the planning permit that the officers have put forward involves a tree management plan, which involves surveying a lot of the trees and working out which of those trees can be kept. And they then go into a Part 5 agreement, which is secure on the title. I'm not sure of what happened on Ribbon Gum Court, whether a similar arrangement was done there or not, so I can't comment on that. In terms of what's permitted on the block outside those constraints, it would be up to what's allowed under the planning scheme.
So any building envelope will have to take into account trees that have been set aside on those blocks.
That's true, and root protection zones as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy.
I haven't put my hand up.
Oh, all right, I thought you'd... all right.
Just around the advice from the Tasmanian Fire Service, that's quite concerning for me that they aren't, in the report anyway, that they, have some major concerns and are asking that, it shouldn't be approved in its current form. Now, I appreciate that you're saying that you've got a different understanding with the TFS and where they're at, but given that's a significant issue potentially for elected members, and they might want to hear directly from the TFS to just, I guess, ensure that we're clear that the TFS is not still saying it shouldn't be approved in its current form, would a deferral be an issue for you if we were to defer it to seek to hear from the horse's mouth directly from the TFS as to what their current advice is?
Chair, we already have an email from Tas Fire Service indicating that this can be achieved. So council has that on its file already.
The Director would like to comment as well. Thank you.
Perhaps if I can assist, Lord Mayor, page 662 of the agenda has a copy of that email.
And does that address all of the issues?
Through your Chair, clarification that the TFS are comfortable that the revised documentation that will follow, if a permit is granted, they will be satisfied.
I see. Okay. So, sorry, if further information is provided, was it?
Through your Chair. So there has been an exchange of information between the applicant and the council and the TFS, and based on the documents that have been circulated already, the TFS is comfortable that once that documentation is finalised and approved by the council as a condition endorsement, that they will be satisfied that the subdivision is appropriate.
Are we reading the same email? It sounds a little bit like they've still got a few concerns, but yeah.
Through your Chair, I think the committee needs to bear in mind the fact that the subdivision at the planning permit stage is still a concept stage. Yeah. There's a detailed design stage to follow, in this case including a revised bushfire hazard management plan. And the TFS has indicated that within the realms of the planning permit approval process, once we get into the condition endorsement phase, they're satisfied that they will be happy with what the applicant's proposing.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Sorry, through you, Chair, if you don't mind. I can also confirm that revised bushfire plan has been lodged with the TFS after some negotiation with them. So that's actually with them for sign-off.
Any other questions? No? Now, would someone would like to ask questions? Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. You can take your seat, and then we'll ask any questions of the director if you have any questions. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Deputy.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to the director, just in relation to that setback from the deputation, the representatives' houses on either side of the new driveway. What can you tell us about that? I mean, is it? I mean, we're talking about a primary setback, and it's not actually set back that far.
Through you, Chair, yes, I can see that this is a bit of an unusual situation, removing one dwelling, and then the road reservation will be relatively close to their property. There is some discussion in the report from the planning report about a potential specific condition in terms of a safety barrier. But I would also say that through the subsequent documentation and detailed design phase, those issues will be carefully considered by both the engineering staff on the applicant's team and both council officers, and they won't be approved until we're satisfied that they're designed appropriately.
And you're talking about a pedestrian crossing, or like perhaps a wombat crossing or something raised there for pedestrian, or a narrower.
Through you, Chair, I don't know that those details have been clarified yet. As I said, the subdivision, all of the civil drawings will be under review again to make sure that we're satisfied that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, to make sure that the subdivision is as far as possible in accordance with the standard drawings released by by LGAT, but taking into account the specifics of the site.
Okay. The other concern, or the other question I have, is in relation to easements. So obviously that right of way on the neighbouring property is extinguished. I mean, that's fairly unusual, isn't it, to do that? I can't remember when that might have happened before.
I might. So, sorry, perhaps if you could clarify, Debbie, you're talking about the easement back down through to the other turning circle?
So the right of way, which is going to be extinguished.
Concerning the laneway that's there.
Yes, yeah. So that's
the laneway which is there next to the Amy and the husband's property.
Oh, sorry. Through you, Chair. I mean, this is this land, the land where the property is going to be, the dwelling is going to be demolished, is the applicant's land, and they're entitled to make any tweaks that they wanted to make in terms of removal of easements. Obviously, that property will become a road reservation with rights for people to pass over it, but just in a different way.
Yeah, and I was looking at the other one on the other side of 21C, but that's okay. I think it's clear in my mind anyway. But just in relation to the stormwater, and Councillor Harvey has spoken to others on Ribbon Gum Court who've been affected, as he said, by stormwater. How can we be assured, and I know that there's no sort of perfect world, but assured that we can mitigate, or this subdivision can mitigate the concerns raised, really very real concerns raised by the representatives?
Through you, Chair, there are a couple of points to make on the stormwater issue. The first is that this application must be considered on its, in confines of this, what's being proposed here. Sure. Certainly not expected that this application would improve the situation that's being caused by other properties. In terms of stormwater leaving the property, the application actually meets the acceptable solution, so there's no discretion to refuse the application on that basis. Clearly there's a concern about the way in which the water moves and the amount of water and how that will impact the property owners. There are extensive stormwater conditions, so again this is going to need to go through the detailed design phase and those issues will be carefully considered as at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luberg.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few questions for the Director. I guess the first one is about the swales. Are they the responsibility of the council to maintain?
Chair, yes, they are.
Have we had any reports about the malfunctioning nature of the east-west swale in particular?
Chair, I'm not able to advise the committee specifically on complaints, but there's certainly nothing. It's acknowledged in the stormwater officer who assessed this application that it needs to be carefully considered going forwards, but there's certainly no suggestion that it's not an appropriate avenue for stormwater to leave this site.
Some other questions. Just I will note that it looks like this particular development actually drops the water into the other swale, the north-south swale. Just with regard to the frontage stuff, I'm just wondering about acceptable solution. Are there limits to the acceptable solution, or is it a binary, either yes or no?
Through you, Chair, the ideal with an acceptable solution is that you know very clearly whether it's met or not. Some of them don't necessarily operate in that way, but which one can I assist you with?
Where are we? Page 102, we're just looking at 6.8.5. It just talks about how the concern is whether the proposal can be considered reasonably acceptable. And that the dwellings are likely to remain reasonably compatible, and the proposal is considered reasonably acceptable. I'm just a little bit concerned that it might not actually be acceptable, but it's almost acceptable. Just wondering about the use of the term reasonably, I guess.
Through you, Chair, I guess this is a reflection of the fact that this is a person providing the committee with a professional assessment. It is difficult, I guess, to tell. You know, you can't look into the future and necessarily know 100%, but they've formed the view based on what the information that's been provided that it will meet the performance criteria.
And just with regard to the WB, I guess, was page 132, part 7.7. It gets sort of mentioned there in an odd way. It gets mentioned as a requested condition, but it's not been taken up as a condition. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that is correct. It's not expressly mentioned in the conditions. We could certainly do that if that would give elected members some comfort. Although having said that, I anticipate that those issues will be considered carefully by the officers as part of the conditioning endorsement process.
Just a bit of an issue on that page too. I just wonder if is there anything missing? Just the end of 7.7 seems to end quite strangely.
Through Chair, I did notice that again when I reread it just now. I don't think any emphasis needs to be placed on that.
Sure, so nothing's missing. Okay, thank you. With regards to part 7.8, talking about the rollover curbs to facilitate turning, it just says we are able to install them, but it is in quotes. Is that us? Is that the council or the fire service? It's still page 132.
Through you, Chair, my understanding is that this was the applicant response. So the TFS did a rep, and then we sent the rep to the applicant who came back with this response.
Actually, now that you say that, I can see that's clear. Okay, look, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Passol.
A couple of questions for the Director. Is there any? Do you know what the load rating is for footpaths?
Through you, Chair, no, I don't specifically, but again, our asset teams are very sensitive to the idea of creating assets that we have a responsibility to maintain. I've specifically required the conditions for the civil drawings to link the bushfire process and the civil drawings so that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing.
Thank you. I noted in the stormwater report that there was no, and I may not get my terminology right here, but no abatement or mitigation or removal of particular noxious toxins that occur with runoff that we do require other subdivisions to provide. The recent example was the Lena Valley case a few planning meetings ago.
Why is that, and why do we think that it's acceptable to allow toxic compounds to flow into natural watercourses in this instance?
Through you, Chair. So the stormwater assessment is on page 114. This is a specific provision which addresses stormwater treatment. Yep. So it has been considered, and while some issues have been raised, ultimately the stormwater team was satisfied that the requirements of the planning scheme are met. Again, this would be an issue for conditioning, because I understand, oh no, sorry, I think maybe the swale is the treatment process for this one. Yep.
As far as I can tell, there's no additional treatment mechanisms in place. Is that my experience so far, bearing in mind I'm a novice councillor, is that consistent with subdivision approval around the city, that we don't require that type of abatement?
Through you, Chair. It's tough for applications, frankly, to get through the stormwater team. They really take their obligations under the scheme very seriously, and the fact that the team has signed off on this one gives me confidence that they're happy. Could they have gone further? Possibly. I don't think, you know, there's a cookie cutter approach to stormwater, frankly. It's something that's very dependent on the circumstances, and here, you know, with the swale that's does provide some treatment, they're satisfied that the scheme is met.
Any other question, Councillor Passon?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, just to clarify, if there was a major flood up there and it caused big problems there, we take the liability for that, take that on, would we? As a result of the drawings and our approval system, could you just clarify that for me?
Through you, Chair. I don't know that I can give a blanket response to that. I think we will do what we can at the detailed design stage to make sure that, and it's acknowledged in the, you don't see this part because it meets, the application meets the acceptable solution, but in that part of the assessment, there's an acknowledgement by officers that the 1% flooding event needs to be carried safely. So we'll do what we can to ensure that the application meets that requirement. But in terms of impact and liability, I don't know that we can make any specific comments about that. Sorry.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I'm curious with this swale because if the current one had been functioning correctly, I would suspect we probably wouldn't have had one of the deputations today, but it wasn't functioning correctly, and then we heard that the responsibility for the functioning of that swale was in fact the council. So whilst we may have not known about it, we do now, and I guess my question relates to the fact that how heavily are we going to be relying now on this swale with the whole plan that we have in front of us? Will there be less or greater reliance on that working, and will there be any attention going forwards from the council to ensure that it does actually perform its function? I'd like to think that now we've had this highlighted as an issue, that these residents have the ability to have confidence in the stormwater being attended to.
Through you, Chair, yes, it's a statutory obligation that the council has to drain the urban area, and as part of that process, when we become aware of assets that aren't performing as we would hope or expect, then they will be added to, upgrade to our capital works program as appropriate. Or there may be other works that we can do in the meantime that can assist in the way that those assets are working.
And my other question regarding this particular application, should that be installed, will there be a greater or lesser reliance on the swale for stormwater drainage?
Through you, Chair, given that this subdivision would be also utilising the swale, I imagine there would be an increased use. Having said that, as I said, the detailed design phase is heavily conditioned by stormwater to ensure that that's done in a sensible way.
Any further question? Councillor Harvey.
I just want to clarify again the use, and the deputy tried to, but I don't think we got to the bottom of it. The right of way between 212 and 212A, will that be extinguished? We're not talking about the road. The 514 will be demolished, and that's where the road will be. But the right of way between 212 and 212A, I think one of the representatives is of the view that will be extinguished. Can we just clarify that?
Through you, Chair, yes, it's my understanding that will be extinguished.
Okay, so where does that land go once it's been extinguished? Who gets that land?
Well, through you, Chair, as I understand it, that's all going to be road reservation. Is that correct?
How can it be road reservation? It's a little lane. It's a right of way.
Through you, Chair, perhaps.
Sorry, excuse me.
It's okay. You've had your 10. Thank you.
I'm not talking about the road, which is on 514, but the right of way, which is a little slip of land, little right of way between 512 and 512A.
I can assist with this question.
Through you, Chair. So, in fact, I think the right-of-way goes between 512A and 510, and it provides a benefit to the owner of 512, which is the proponent of the development. So there's no need for that right-of-way to continue anymore because they have access through 514. So that right-of-way gets extinguished, the benefit that was provided to the owner of 5112 goes away, and the land is simply for the enjoyment of the current owners of 512A.
Okay, so they could move their boundary, they could take down their boundary fence and take over that land. Their land.
And there's a condition or two in relation to this, yeah.
Yeah, okay, now I just wanted to make sure that was the case, because that's what Amy suggested, and it didn't come out as clear as that when Deputy Lord Mayor asked.
So it's clarified now. Is that clear? Thank you so much for the clarification. Are there any other questions? Councillor Luberger.
One more, Chair, thank you. Just through you to the Director. I'm just looking at page 104, 6.10.5 regarding open space. The performance criterion provides that public open space must be provided as land or cash in lieu with this particular development. Can I just confirm that we, despite that performance criteria, we decided not to request public open space, even though we had the power to do so?
Yeah, it's my understanding that cash in lieu is required, but
Chair. It was certainly considered by our public open space team whether or not to take public open space as land rather than as cash, given some of the natural values on the balanced lot. But it was decided ultimately that given the access to public open space, high quality public open space nearby, and some of the issues associated with the remnant vegetation on that lot, that it was preferable to take cash in lieu as opposed to land. So it was actively considered but not pursued.
Thank you. You've answered my supplementary as well about the balance lot. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other question? Councillor Passol.
One further, I'm sorry, just to the Director. Noting the acceptable solutions and the performance solutions as in the scheme on street frontages, do you think that this proposal is in keeping with the spirit of the scheme, in that the scheme says that street frontages should be 30 metres, and we have some street frontages in this proposal that are less than 10. And while the block size is still large, from the public space realm, or the realm of public space, it would appear that it is more dense than it actually is. So do you have any comments or thoughts on whether or not you think that this is actually keeping within, even though it does quite meet the performance criteria just, is it within the spirit?
Through you, Chair, I guess the performance criteria are there to provide flexibility to be able to cater for different types of circumstances. In this circumstance, this subdivision is not unlike the next door. There's Ribbon Gum Court, and like much of Mount Nelson is quite deep in terms of the subdivisions coming off Nelson Road. So I can see why you might be troubled by this, but at the same time, I think in the circumstances of this application, we are comfortable that the performance criteria has been met.
Any other questions?
I have one question. Look, it's always a questionable one. What would you consider could happen if this matter went to tribunal? I know it's one of those curly questions. I'm just curious.
Through you, Chair. Look, I will say that this is the third iteration of this subdivision. The applicant's right in the sense that they have worked very hard with our officers to get to the point where we are satisfied that this land can be subdivided, meeting all the various requirements of the scheme. And a really key one has been the Biodiversity Code and the Bushfire Management Code. And overall, we are satisfied that this application does meet the scheme. And so my view is that an appeal would be successful on the part of the applicant.
Councillor Passau, question? If you want to move, someone wants to have a motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this item for refusal.
And the reason?
A multitude of reasons, if you'd like me to elaborate on why I'm making that motion now. So I think that it just doesn't stack up. There's too much in the performance category and not enough in the acceptable solution category. The language around the setbacks really troubles me. I don't think that there's enough room for a road there that meets the criteria. I think the shortest distance was 1.2 metres, but the scheme says a bare minimum. The desirable length under the acceptable solution would be 6 metres, I think it is, and the minimum standard in the performance criteria is 3, and yet we're looking at 1.2, which is not even half of the minimum standard set out in the performance criteria. And I'm really not convinced on that element alone that this proposal does actually meet the requirements of the scheme. That's the most concrete reason I have to offer a refusal at this point, but there's a number of other considerations in my book. The first thing is that I don't think considering the subdivision next door as an exemplar is good practice. I don't know if the residents of Mount Nelson who were there before that subdivision think it's particularly great, and we're hearing that there are stormwater and sewerage problems as a result of that approval. So I'm not sure why we're looking to next door's subdivision say, well, it's been done next door, so therefore we should do it here as well. Bearing in mind that every subdivision in a constrained stormwater and sewerage environment puts more pressure into the same system. In addition to that, we've got, I think, 5 species that are listed as endangered or threatened that use this habitat, and yet we're still happy to consider removal of all of that grazing habitat, in particular for our threatened species, the swift parrot. But then there's also the overflowing sewerage, the stormwater concerns. It doesn't meet acceptable solutions for traffic either. And when you combine the fact that it doesn't meet acceptable solutions for traffic with the failure to meet the acceptable solution for setbacks, the danger of an incident occurring on that corner is actually probably higher because those two risks coalesce. So I think there's a multitude of reasons why this is not a good development. I don't think that this is in the spirit of the low density residential use zone, particularly on the street frontages. If you go along Nelson Road, you see quite large street frontages which really give that bushland feel, which is why people live in Mount Nelson. If they want to live in suburbia, they go to West Hobart to Mount Stewart. They don't go to Mount Nelson. People go to Mount Nelson for a particular feel. They go to Mount Nelson because there's no curbs and gutters, because there's dirt, because there's bushland, because it feels like you're not in the city. And that's what this zone is meant to achieve. And yet here we are looking at 17 blocks with street frontages well under 30 metres. So that's why I'm moving it for refusal. I don't think it's in the best interests of Mount Nelson. I don't think it meets the scheme. and I do have safety concerns as well as the TFS access concerns, which also go to that safety argument as well.
Thank you, Councillor Prosol. I'm just wondering if, while we're having the debate, would you be able to put those reasons and send them across? It'll help the staff, which clauses that you are referring to. Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Anyone else wants to speak to this motion? No. Okay.
Look, Chair, no one else is going to make a contribution. I don't particularly think this is a great proposal, great development. I think there's going to be, well, I hope there's not ongoing issues, but the land is residential. It's met the requirements of the scheme, even though it could be argued that there's too many discretions. And I also fear the fact that the more dense that Mount Nelson comes, the higher the fire risk into the future when the Great Fire of Hobart hits us. But it's recommended for approval. I think it's easy to defend in a tribunal if it does go to a tribunal. If the neighbours on the corners of the roads can get a good outcome with regard to what they perceive as threats to their houses and to their, property, then that's great. And can you just reassure me again that there are provisions that will alleviate their concerns?
Through you, Chair, in terms of fencing.
In terms of fencing?
Well, not through the planning process, but there is separate legislation which gives them the power to, there'll be potentially shared costs, but there is a legislative process for neighbours to agree on fencing.
Well, I think the representative of the developer stated that they would look at that, but we can't condition that occur.
Through you, Chair, no.
That's his goodwill on their behalf to say that they will communicate with the neighbours to make sure that there is a good outcome.
Well, through you, Chair, it's a matter for the neighbours to get good,
well, no, I'm just
good and early advice, and then the applicant might be required to fence, as opposed to a goodwill measure. So the legislation gives powers to require people to do certain things or to make a contribution to the cost of fencing. Which I would do sooner rather than later if I were the neighbours. But
but I think I did hear some positive comments about that, and I'd like to think that I'm not disappointed down the track. So look, I won't be supporting the recommendation for refusal, even though I do have concerns about stormwater, but it looks like we may be able to resolve that, and I support Alderman Bloomfield's comments that council might have to take some responsibility for the maintenance of the swales, and I don't know, I haven't witnessed those swales. I've never seen how they perform, but I've only got the evidence here that they haven't been performing to the best of their purpose, so I hope that is taken on board. Is that something we can guarantee we'll be looking at? I also understand what Alderman Basalt is talking about when it comes to, pollutants in the stormwater, but every single road in Hobart is in the same situation. Tyre, rubber, all the other hydrocarbons that come from our oil and petrol leaks and things, and if just for your own, every single tyre loses 1.5% of its weight in dust, tyre dust. So 50 million tyres a year in Australia, all of them lose 1.5 kilos. So every single road in the country is covered in tyre dust, and today, on a rainy day, all that went into the stormwater. It was washed away, and it sits on your window ledge as well, by the way, and up your nose. So nothing we can do to condition that, because it's ubiquitous to the entire world with a fleet of billions of cars. So I'll be supporting the recommendation for approval, which I'll foreshadow a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Sherlock and then Councillor Pastor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and through you. Look, this was a really difficult for me, which way I would go, but after hearing everything, I did just want to note a few of my concerns, which is the stormwater, and that's already been discussed, and I'm satisfied with regards to what we're going to do there. The other thing I did want to note on page 137 of the report that's in front of us, just with regards to the swales, and when we go to the condition endorsement phase, if it refers to the condition endorsement advice at the end of the permit, as well as the identified upgrades required to the swale on 12 Ribbon Gum Court, and the erosion mitigation on 22, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, Leywina, and the confluence of the Ribbon Gum Court drainage swale with this swale must be examined, and the permit to construct public infrastructure is required, which will also include requirements of indemnities, CCTV and maintenance period bonds. So there's a few things there that I think we should note in terms of some of the issues that has been outlined. So that's number one. The next one is when we're talking about that safety barrier that Amy discussed. Could we put that as advice? Is that possible? I know that you discussed that.
We could certainly add it as advice, or even add it as a specific condition
yes,
with some parameters to make sure that it's...
Yes, let's add it as a specific...
That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing the refusal at this stage.
Yeah, so can we,
And
we can do that later. So it's a refusal motion that we're debating.
Yeah, okay. So just with regards to then the refusal, I'm sort of leaning towards supporting Councillor Harvey for the reasons that I've just discussed.
Later, we're talking about the refusal.
There's
a foreshadowed motion at present that will come later.
Sure, happy to do that then.
Thank you. Just a question of clarification on the Boundary Fences Act. A statement was made by the developer or the representative that the fence in question will become a fence to public land, which means that the fence, then the Boundary Fences Act does not apply, and it will be wholly incumbent on the owner to replace the fence with whatever they want to, not even a partial 50-50 split with the neighbour, because we're the neighbour, the council. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, it's currently private property as a residential, so if I were the neighbours, I'd be getting some advice early and acting on that early.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean early?
As in before the subdivision takes place. It's a matter for the neighbours to get advice on that though.
But does that when does that occur? What's the time? Like, is that?
It doesn't become public. Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yes.
It doesn't become public land until we've been through the detailed design phase, the works have done, and then the land is actually transferred to us, and we become the owner of the road reserve.
I worked with them, yeah.
Can you? Is there any other comments? Any questions? So remember, we're speaking on the motion of refusal. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? No. I just want to make a comment in here. Again, I refer to the performance criteria and also the acceptable solution. Under D12.5.2P1, the statement is made that the performance criteria at clause P1 provides as follows, and I read, the arrangement and construction of roads within a subdivision must satisfy all the following. The operative word for me is the word must, and the other operative word is all. And there are a number of elements in there. The elements A to J. Now in element J, it says multiple escape routes are provided if in a bushfire-prone area. Now, I seek clarification once I've spoken, but under this particular clause, my question is this, whether this subdivision is a bushfire-prone area, and the answer is yes. Then the second logical question is this, whether there are multiple escape routes provided. Now, I don't see that there are multiple routes provided in here. So therefore, under this particular clause, it fails, unless there is another interpretation and I am not reading it correctly. So on that basis, under this rule, I will support the refusal. Thank you. Now, anyone else wants to speak before I put that? Okay, those in favor of the motion of refusal? Hands up, those in favor. those not in favour? Okay, it's lost. Now we have the foreshadowed motion.
I'll move the officer's
recommendation of staff. Any discussion? Councillor Sherlock.
I won't say it all again, but just to, I won't say the bit about the page 137 and the taking care of the swale issue, but I did want to ask if it was possible then to condition the safety barrier. Could we do that?
We can include that as a something to be incorporated if possible.
Yep, that would be great. And then could we add that in? I know you've just said that it's up to the applicant as soon as possible to discuss with the applicant regarding the planked fence. Can we can't add that as an advice, can we? Or we can't, can we? No. We could just...
Not really, but let's,
let's
at the end of the day,
anyway.
we can put it in there if that's...
That would be great. Yeah, and I think also just to let the applicant know from 512A, please talk to them now before... There is a process, obviously, before it becomes... Hobart City Council land, is that what you were saying? And then maybe the applicant as well in goodwill can also reach out to them as well with regards to what they have suggested they would do. The infrastructure and development aspect by council, and as the applicant has said, hopefully will alleviate some of the issues with regards to the water. I'm also looking at this application on its merits. The stormwater meets the acceptable solution as has already been discussed, and there's also extensive stormwater conditions. And so to take account of the issue with regards to the safety barrier that we're going to condition, as well as the advice that we're giving the applicant at 512A, I really do also support approval of this this application. Thank you.
Councillor Lohberger, did you want to say something?
Yes, look, I'm just happy that we've conditioned that WB. I think that's a good idea. I think the amenity for those residents is important because I think it was fairly threatened, leading to the use of the word reasonably acceptable in the report. Reasonably okay with the stormwater, I think, given that it's been raised with the council now. It is our asset. It does sound like we are going to do something to fix it, and it does sound like it's going to be actually extended and improved. However, I still will be voting no in this, but I just wanted to indicate that I'm happy with a few of the things that we've done here tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Deputy?
Chair, I think this is quite a difficult one to consider, and we've talked about bushfire hazards, we've talked about the impact on neighbours, we've talked about stormwater. We've also talked about not comparing it to the sins of the past in Ribbon Gum Court. However, I think we also learn from what has been done in the past as well to try and do things better. And I want everything to go okay. With stormwater, I don't want it to be a burden for other people downstream. So there's a lot riding on this to be better. But at the end of the day, this is a subdivision for 17 lots. We're talking about housing, and whilst I don't necessarily think we need that building our way out of a housing crisis is necessarily the only way to do things, because I do believe that we should be reining in short stay accommodation, as we talked about endlessly at this committee. However, this is zoned residential. I think the officers have worked very hard to get a good result out of this, and I know that it's not the wish of a lot of the representors, but I am comforted that this is in some ways as good as it can get in relation to how this has been approached.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm not an expert in hydraulic traffic planning, bushfire, sewer or environmental, but I rely on the reports, and we don't have much choice if it's going to go to TASCAT, because that's the end of the day, that's the gold standard of to where it's going to end up, and or decisions are going to be made there at least. And look, there's not a lot I like about it, you know, the carving up of great bushland like that, but if that's what the planning scheme says, that's what it is. And we're just simply not in a position to think that it's not quite the right thing to do, or I think I'm an expert in all these very complex things. I take heart from what the Director from Planning says. This has had 3 really big goes at it now, and I'm putting a lot of trust, a real lot of trust in our planning people, particularly when it comes to this hydraulic issues, which to me I'm still not comfortable with, but who am I to question an expert opinion on it? So I am going to support the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Prasad.
Thank you. Just a question mark on conditioning a Wombat crossing, Director. For two purposes, pedestrian safety and for the speed abatement of vehicles taking that corner if we're going to allow a road to be built a metre from somebody's bedroom.
Is it more a flush, a raised footpath rather than the actual crossing?
It's not our role to do this.
Can the Director respond to that?
Through you, Chair, I'm just reluctant. I don't have the technical expertise to make a comment on that. I mean, we could include it in the condition or we could include it as advice. If it was included, I'd say if supported by council officers, for example. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Hang on, was that just included in?
That's included in.
Oh, sorry, that's your decision.
Yes, no. Look, I was wandering around looking at corner houses the other day. As you do, and walking along Cascade Road, and most of the corner houses have a small footpath, and then very close to the road. So I'm not sure whether a Wombat crossing is going to have any impact, and it's not like it's a major road where there's lots of cars swinging around the corner, and I know there's a lot of bozo drivers out there, but I'm assuming most people are pretty responsible when they go around a corner, and they try and keep all 4 wheels on the ground. So I just can't see a need for a Wombat crossing there.
I think Wombat crossing is the wrong terminology, isn't it? Simply at the entrance of the subdivision, it's a raised threshold so that the footpath continues in a straight, like a flush. It's a flush to the footpath, and it also acts as a speed hump going into the subdivision. So it's not really Wombat crossing; it's a raised threshold, and I would have thought it's quite common in many subdivisions these days.
So anyone else wants to speak to the motion, the foreshadowed motion? No. I would.
Does anyone want to speak to the amendment?
No, I thought that was added in. It's not amending.
Well, no, I haven't.
Are you accepting that or not?
I haven't accepted it,
right.
so it'll need to be put as an amendment.
All right. So can we then?
So I'll just speak to the amendment.
Thank you.
I think as per what the Director was saying, if the officers actually believe that it's important, or is that what you said? Could you just reiterate what you said?
Through you, Chair, I'm just reluctant. I don't have the technical expertise to make any comment about any specific road features. So I'm reluctant to say that becomes a mandatory requirement. If it's added in as something that could be considered, then I would be more comfortable with that. But I think it's very much something that should be in the hands of both the applicant's engineering experts and the council's engineering experts.
So can we?
I'll add it as okay. Because I don't think, I support the Director's comments. I don't think we should be foisting it on the developer or the area. And do we do it to every other corner along the road?
So just do it something.
Corner, it's
be considered. Okay.
Can I have one person speaking? Thank you, Bill. Councillor.
If it's something to be considered, and the directors are okay with that, then I'm happy to include it as something to be considered.
It is being considered.
Yeah.
All right. So can we put that? So do you accept that? So
Yes,
we don't
as
have
something to be considered.
Considered. Okay. All right. So we leave that to the director to word it as the director seems appropriate. Thank you. Now, anyone else wants to speak to this? Yeah, I want to speak to this again. There are just few things mentioned. Firstly, with regards to us considering if this is going to test CAD, again, is not the test here. But if you take that line of argument, we know that sometimes it has gone there, and through the process of mediation, we get a much better deal. We get a much better outcome. And then it comes back to us. There is no expense financially, as it were, to the extent if it's hearing. So that is a possibility. Point number two is that, yes, none of us are experts in this area. It's beyond us. We read what's there. We then look at the clauses, the rules that we have to apply. That's the only area that we have to apply these, our discretion. So with regards to expert advice, what we have just done in the previous application, there was an expert advice, and yet some of us voted against it. So there is that contradiction, isn't it? It is that sometimes we agree with expert advice, sometimes we don't, and that is our right as elected members. And the final point that I want to make here is this, that I am not an expert, but when I read this clause, which is very simple to me and very clear, I have difficulty with it, and I read it again, unless there is another interpretation. Clause 15.5.2P1.
What page is that?
Page 102, 6.9.4. The arrangement and construction of roads within a subdivision must satisfy all of the following. And when I read that, it says must, and it says all of this. And the all refers to A to J. And J is saying multiple escape routes are provided if in a bushfire-prone area. So my question was, is this in the bushfire-prone area? And the answer is yes. Unless you are saying no, the answer is no. Then the logical question is, are there multiple escape routes provided? The answer is no. So while it is a very simple question, is it a fireproof zone area? The answer is yes. Do we have multiple escape routes? The answer is no. So therefore, I feel uncomfortable supporting it based on the rule. That's what I'm saying. Thank you very much. I put the vote now. Those in favor of the four-shaded motion? Aye. In favor, please put your hands up.
Those in favour?
Those in favour.
Hang on.
The four-shaded motion?
No.
Front of us, yeah.
The foreshadowed is the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
Four-shaded motion.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Kelly, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Against?
Lord Mayor, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Desselt, and Councillor Data.
The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item, 6.2.2, 23 Nelson Road, Sandy Bay.
Recommendation, Chair.
Okay, the recommendation is moved by the deputy. Anyone wants to speak to that?
I just have a question, if I'm just in relation to the back of the application. So up the hill, basically, we have the bicentennial track coming through. Is there some sort of linkage to the bicentennial track as part of this application? I know I'm looking at a change rooms.
Through you, Chair, I have not considered that question. I can have a look at that now.
And I have another question, if I might. This is often used by, I think, Hutchins. Is that right? How?
Sorry, through you, Chair. I think maybe it's the Sandy Bay Football Club. I think that uses it.
Oh, okay, right. And how possible is this upgrade likely to be used by other sporting facilities or sporting clubs?
Through you, Chair, I'm not up to speed with that issue. I know that this has been, these works are subject to a state government grant, and it's recognised that, in particular, that the progress towards having 2 sets of change rooms allows, in particular, a more friendly space for women to start participating in sport in the way that we expect in a modern world.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that opens up to other clubs using it, I'm not sure, but it's certainly anticipated that this will expand participation.
And possibly other codes.
Yes, that may well be the case.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wants to speak to the motion? No? I put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 7, report 7.1, planning advertised applications report.
We get an update. Is there anything of note on it, Chair?
Through you, Chair, no, I didn't have anything specific, although I think Councillor Pasalt may have a question potentially.
Item number 7. This is the Airbnb over the river.
Sorry, I was looking at...
Am I on the wrong table?
I was looking at the advertised applications. Number 7 is the ancillary dwelling at 9 to 11 Browns Road, which I suspect you're not interested in.
I do have a question. I just wanted to talk about the Evans Street proposal, $70,000. I'm just wondering what that involves, because obviously it's at Mac Point by the look of it.
What number is it?
Oh, sorry, number 10.
Through you, Chair, yes, there are 2 there for Mac Point and for...
Oh yeah, number 9 as well.
So I think number 10 is essentially the moving of the long shed over to where the Sea Roads shed was and has since been demolished, and all the associated stuff with the long shed. Is that the right terminology, right name? The edible precinct, essentially. So that's that application. And the one before it, item number 9, is a fairly mundane extension to the car park and reconfiguration, yes.
Any other questions?
Sorry, so the long shed is the one that's just been assessed for heritage or not?
No,
it's
through
not
you, Chair. The long shed is the recently constructed one close to where the coal store used to be.
Yes. Are they going to keep that somewhere?
Yeah. It was approved, it was always intended that it would be demountable, and they're picking it up effectively and moving it over to where there's Sea Roads shed. I'm not sure off the top of my head which is the item that's the building that's been nominated for THC listing yet.
Any other questions?
Yes, I've got a question for the Director through you, Chair. Just asking if any large DAs might have been withdrawn recently.
Oh, are we on questions for that notice?
Isn't that what we're...
Perhaps if Mr Iker might be able to assist with that one. I'm not aware of any.
Through you, Chair, nothing springs to mind, but you're testing my memory.
But perhaps relating to UTAS.
Relating to what, sorry?
UTAS.
Yeah, through you, Chair, there has been an application that's been withdrawn for UTAS. I wouldn't say it was a big application, it was a pretty minor application. I think for the parklet in Melville Street, their advice to us is that their priorities have changed and they no longer need the application to continue.
Thank you. It's a rumour I'd heard, so just confirm. Thank you.
Perhaps just for clarification, that was an application that went through advertising. It got 245 objections. They hit pause before it came to council. We've been continuing to extend the time, basically, for the application, but they've since advised that they no longer wish to pursue the application, yes.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Any other questions? No.
Questions without notice or?
No, we're looking at planning.
On the planning, okay.
7.1. Now, just a question to the Director with regards to, and I'm not to clear, I have a sheet of paper here, but it's not got any heading. Is it delegated decision report? Number 30, is that 7.2 or 7.1?
Chair, I'm sorry, but the list I'm looking at doesn't correspond with what everybody's thinking about, so I'm a little bit confused.
No, I'm confused too. I'm confused too. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, go to the update.
So item 1 on the list that I'm looking at is 56 to 58 Warwick Street.
Perhaps I can assist. There was an error with the advertising report that was attached to the original agenda. So there's a replacement item on the hub, a replacement item 7.2.1, and so that's the item that I'm referring to. So is that also item 30 that you're referring to, Councillor Dutta?
So is it in the same list? Can I clarify? Number 30. Is it in 7.2? There's no title on it.
So, Chair, that is the advertised list. The delegated list is much more compact.
Okay, all right. So
that's this one here.
All right. Okay. So I have a question on number 30.
That 1A Stony Steps.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's an application that's been approved for a dwelling on a recently subdivided block at the back of what was formerly known as 300 or currently known as 376 Hewan Road. So recently subdivided. It's a 2-storey and garage dwelling.
Right. So just a follow-up question there. You know, there were a number of queries about that, and I don't know if some of the other elected members have received it. But there was a question with regards to process, and that things were not dealt properly or in a timely fashion when complaints and concerns were lodged. Would you be able to clarify that, please? If that, you know.
Chair, perhaps if I can assist. Yes. My recollection is that I received a number of elected member requests about that application. As I recall, advertising closed on the 3rd of January. It expired the following day. There was some frustration expressed that we hadn't taken into account the representations because of that tight turnaround. It is absolutely within the planner's capabilities, and they're expected to properly take into account any representations, and they're able to do so within a day and properly issue a report. So I can just reassure the committee and the community that all proper processes were followed for that application.
Thank you. Any other questions, any other queries? Okay, put that 7.1. All in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. 7.2, delegated decision report planning.
So moved.
Moved. Any questions? Any comments?
Chair, perhaps I can note that the Director has a fairly broad delegation over the Christmas period between the last committee and this committee. I didn't determine any unusual applications during that period.
Thank you. Okay, I put that to vote then. 7.2, everybody, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Questions without notice, number 8. Deputy, and then the Lord Mayor.
Yes, and I'll send this through. So in light of the Salamanca Place item discussed today, could the Director please provide advice regarding consideration of what are effectively televisions in occupational licences and any other considerations relating to unusual things? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'll take that on notice.
Yeah, I've also got 4 questions which I can provide relating to occupancy licences. So I'll just read them out. Do council's occupancy licences require that the areas not be used as a gambling venue? Question 2, do council's occupancy licences rule out signage that promotes gambling products and services within the occupancy licence? 3, can officers seek advice from the licensing branch regarding any rules around allowing gambling on public land? And 4, if gambling is not allowed in our occupancy licence areas, what steps will staff be taking to monitor compliance with the occupancy licence?
I'll take those questions on notice.
Thank you. Anyone? Councillor Passau.
Just, I guess this is just an extension to the Lord Mayor's question, but when you're considering your response, I think that some of the nature has changed. Like, how
do you determine if someone's betting on their phone in a venue? I don't think that's something we can control, but if you can include that in your response, the changing nature, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, that's...
Any other questions? No questions.
It's occupant.
All right, number 9.
To make sure it doesn't happen.
But, that's the point.
Someone
You can
move, please, number 9.
bet anywhere. Yeah.
All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for